Chapter 5:11. In front of the security checkpoint, Lu Cheng was carrying a 20-inch trolley box, which was filled with the loot he got from shopping with Yan Zhike. There were new clothes for him from head to toe and gifts for Lu Jisheng, Qi Fang, and the others. It's so good to have a wife. She's so thoughtful. Lu Cheng looked at Yan Zhike, who still looked tired. He tucked her hair behind her ear and said with a smile, "I'm going in. Go home quickly. Sleep early tonight. Get some sleep." Yan Zhike was touched at first, but as she listened, she became embarrassed and angry. She opened her eyes, shook her right arm, and punched Lu Cheng in the abdomen. Her move was smooth, but she didn't use any strength. "Who's to blame?" she whispered, gritting her teeth. She waved and turned around, pretending to be cool. She walked slowly to Du Yan, who was waiting for her at the elevator. Lu Cheng held his stomach and stood up straight. He looked at his little fairy's back with a smile and muttered to himself, "Should I post a question on the forum? My wife is getting less and less shy and more violent. What should I do? Well, they'll definitely answer, 'Show off your love, get lost,' or 'I entered the wrong post, I'll get lost myself.'" While thinking, he watched Yan Zhike walk away. When she was about to enter the stairs, Yan Zhike finally couldn't hold back her emotions anymore. She turned around and looked at Lu Cheng, who was still standing there, not moving at all. Their eyes met. She couldn't help but curse under her breath, "Idiot," because they wouldn't be apart for too long this time, as they would come again next month, and because they already had experience, the two of them weren't as reluctant to part as before. After looking at each other for more than 10 seconds, they waved again, entered the elevator, and went through the security check. They skillfully switched to online dating mode. Lu Cheng's flight was smooth. The flight took off on time, and there was no bad news in the weather forecast. Smith resisted the urge to wave his fist and celebrate. He rearranged the surveillance reports during this period, threw out a spider thread, and rushed into the director's office. It was as if he was running to freedom. Thank God, amen. In a spacious and clean hospital with few patients, a brown-haired middle-aged man with a stiff face and missing an arm looked through the window at the unconscious house in the intensive care unit. He said to the person beside him, "He's close to brain death." "I know," the black-robed man with green eyes answered calmly. It was hard to tell how old he was. His appearance was ordinary, but he had the temperament of a scholar. There was also an illusory sense of mystery that did not belong to the real world, making people admire him and willing to listen to his every word. "Lucas, I have a suggestion. Let me take him away. You should know that we have the artificial weapons project. That will allow House to live in another way," the one-armed man said solemnly. Lucas, who looked like a mysterious scholar, was silent for a moment before he nodded indiscernibly. "I have no objections." The one-armed man heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Haven't you found any useful clues about the Deliverman?" "No, psychic is not omnipotent. In the absence of a direction, even a great teacher can't do anything." Lucas replied slowly, "But as long as he appears a few more times, we will definitely be able to catch him. Wherever he goes, there will be traces left behind. The only difference is how many traces there are. Once we accumulate enough traces, things will be simple." "May God bless you," the one-armed man said out of habit. But as soon as he finished speaking, he felt that it was inappropriate. God would not bless this group of evil spirit cultivators. It was more likely that he would send down holy light to purify them. Lucas had obviously thought of this as well. He smiled mockingly, took one last look at House in the ICU, and turned to leave. "Lucas, there's one more thing. You have to complete the dissection as soon as possible and throw out a few people to calm the public opinion." The one-armed man raised his voice and reminded him. "We're doing it now." Lucas turned around and smiled. "Gore, when this is over, I'll invite you to my private island for a vacation." "My pleasure." The one-armed man imagined the scene on the island and felt a burning sensation in his lower abdomen. When Lu Cheng flew to Songcheng, it was the eve of the 11th. The members of the martial arts club would have a 3-day holiday. He planned to go back to Shushan on the 2nd of October to help his parents move and send gifts to each of them. After half a year of drying the new house, they could finally move in. As soon as he entered the dormitory, Lu Qing saw Zhao Cheng, Zhang Jingye, and Qiu Zhigao returning from self-study. "Hey, you're early." "Hey, you're back." Both parties greeted each other in surprise. At this time, Zhao Cheng smiled a little embarrassedly. "Cheng, let's have dinner together tonight." "It's my treat." "Your treat? Why?" Lu Qing sized up the head of the dormitory, Comrade Cheng. He wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses and combed his hair neatly. Although he looked old, he had a sense of maturity. As expected of a scholar, "Cheng, you've been living a simple life. You don't even know the Han dynasty, let alone the Wei and Jin dynasties." Kai Zongming came over from the dormitory next door and dropped a line. After all, he was admitted to Songqing University with his own ability. "What's going on?" Lu Cheng was curious. Qiu Zhigao explained enviously, "Cheng has a girlfriend. He has to treat." "Girlfriend? The one from Songqing Normal University?" Lu Qing asked. "That was Zhao Cheng's high school classmate." "Yes." Zhao Cheng nodded happily and shyly. "Didn't you say that there was an elder who taught you to study more when you're young and not to waste time on love?" Lu Qing teased him with amusement. "People still have to consider the course of history in this life." Zhao Cheng sighed with satisfaction. "Speak human language." Lu Qing interrupted his explanation. Zhao Cheng scratched his head helplessly. "I just can't help it. I like her. What can I do?" "I think you're pretty good at taking action." Lu Qing praised from the bottom of his heart. "It's okay. It's mainly because she likes me too." Zhao Cheng beamed with joy. Classmate Little Ming said disdainfully, "They talk every day. You go to my school and I go to yours on weekends. They'll either be lovers or enemies. Friendship between classmates? Who are you kidding? Didn't I say before that Chang will be. He made a gesture of holding his hand in the palm of his hand. Zhao Chang could only smile awkwardly. After a burst of laughter, Lu Qing asked casually, "Where are we going for dinner tonight?" "Let's go to Songqing Normal University. They're on the old campus. There's a street full of delicious food next to them," Zhao Chang suggested. Songqing Normal University was originally called Songqing Normal University. Later, because of a dog called Chow Chow, people automatically changed it. The old campus of Songqing Normal University is a bit far. Kai Zongming said hesitantly. "Hey, Casanova, that's not like you." Lu Qing was stunned and joked. "Why not?" Kai Zongming glanced at his best friend. "If it were you in the past, you would definitely say that Songqing Normal University is a good place. There are so many beautiful women. As a married man, although you won't fool around, you can feast your eyes and be happy. How could you say it's far away?" Lu Qing mocked, talker, without holding back. Kai Zongming was stunned for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Things are different now. Look, I have special training in the morning and homework in the afternoon and at night. I'm not like you, who have the protection of the academy and school, so I'm not afraid of exams. The rest of my time is only enough to chat with my Fang Yuan. I have to make use of every opportunity to play games. How can I be in the mood to look at beautiful women? My current state is the standard of a dead heart, dumbfounded. Haha, I'm happy to hear you say that." Lu Qing patted Little Ming's shoulder. Kai Zongming curled his lips and said, "I was going to advise you not to live like a monk when your girlfriend isn't around. How good would it be to be a little more sunny? But now I understand that it's so king tiring. How can I be in the mood and energy?" After a short rest, the five of them set off. On the way, they talked about how they started. Zhao Chang was a natural success, and both of them had a good impression of each other at about the same time. Zhang Jingye was the one who chased after girls. During that time, he was often invited by Wu Qian to go on a trip. As for the Casanova, time revealed a person's heart. After understanding his feelings, it didn't take much effort for him to be together with Fang Yuan. It seems that I'm the only one who really got her. Lu Qing sighed with emotion. As soon as he finished speaking, he remembered Yan Zhike, who was far away in America. When they parted just now, he already missed her. 40 minutes later, they arrived at the north gate of Songqing Normal University and met Zhao Chang's old classmate and current girlfriend, Wang Shi. She was about 1.6 meters tall with fair skin. You know my roommates, Lu Qing. He has to wear glasses when he goes out now. Otherwise, he'll block the traffic. Zhao Chang introduced his roommates to his girlfriend. Hello, there are 2 girls in our dorm who are your fans. Wang Shi greeted politely. I can only say thank you. Lu Qing replied with a smile. Kai Zongming, I've told you before, talker, the guy who only has one mouth left. Zhang Jingye, model worker, and old Qiu, the only single dog left in our small dormitory. You have to introduce them to him. Zhao Chang proudly said one by one. While chatting casually, they entered the food street near the north gate and found a famous barbecue restaurant. While waiting, Lu Qing talked about the local customs of America. Everyone listened with great interest. They were interested in the social phenomenon of superheroes. At this moment, his phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. Who is it? Lu Qing suspected that it was a scam or a sales call, but he still chose to answer in case he missed something important. As soon as the call connected, a magnetic voice came from the other side. Lu Qing. Yes, you are. Lu Qing asked in confusion. The other side didn't hesitate and answered naturally, I'm Qin Qitao. Chapter 5:12. Lu Cheng's first reaction when he heard the other party's name was Qin Qitao, what af * King Liar. His mind was already filled with jokes, such as, I'm Dragon King, Qin Qitao. I'm severely injured and have lost all my martial arts. I'm stranded in a foreign land and don't dare to contact anyone I know for fear of being discovered by my enemies. I hope you can lend me $5,000 for travel expenses to help me return to the Longhu Club. When I'm back, I'll take you in as my disciple and teach you the unique skills of the fire sect, or give you half of my assets. As for knowing his name, damn it. Which high-class liar wouldn't buy big data? Resisting the urge to blurt out, I'm returning Qian Donglu, Lu Qing replied calmly, Senior, is there anything I can help you with? This voice sounded so f * King familiar. It sounded like the Dragon King when he was being interviewed. Even the tone was similar. The tone on the other end of the phone remained unchanged. If you're not returning to the Wuyue Club next year, come to the Longhu Club. Not scammed. No one should know that I'm not returning to the Wuyue Club. Could it be the real Dragon King? Lu Chen was excited. Without thinking, he gave an affirmative answer. Okay. The Dragon King personally invited me. The other end of the phone paused for a moment. The magnetic voice didn't mention what had just happened. Instead, it said calmly, the core of Emperor Yan force is weight, not combustion, and definitely not explosion. You have understood this point very well. However, you have yet to reach the external realm of heaven and earth. Blindly pursuing weight is not in line with the actual condition of your body. It won't be long before you reach a bottleneck. You can try to do more at the inhuman stage and mix in the charm of combustion. Okay. Lu Qing listened with a dumbfounded face, replying from time to time. How did this turn into teaching over the phone? After a few minutes, the person who called himself Qin Qitao stopped and said slowly, that's all. As soon as he finished speaking, the beeping sound was heard. Lu Qing held the phone and stood there in a daze for a long time, unable to come back to his senses. It really is the Dragon King. Who would be so free as to teach me Emperor Yan force? The Dragon King personally invited me. To personally invite me. As a qualified fan, Lu Chen was both excited and agitated. He couldn't wait to shout this through the loudspeaker. "What's wrong, Cheng?" "Who called?" Zhao Chang asked in confusion because of his strange expression. It seemed to have come from some senior. Lu Chen was about to share with his roommates the fact that the Dragon King had personally invited him when he suddenly felt that it would be too showy and high profile. Hence, he smiled reservedly and said, "Nothing much. I was just discussing the professional competition with a senior." "Oh, when the time comes, you should directly enter the top professional competition and fight with the Wiyue Club, right?" Qiu Zhigao asked curiously. "Not necessarily," Lu Chen replied with a smile. At the same time, he picked up his phone and sent a firecracker emoji to Yanjika. "The Dragon King called me." Yanjika had just woken up and replied, rubbing my sleepy eyes expression, "Is it really Dragon King? Am I still asleep?" "Of course. Based on his understanding of Emperor Yan Force, I can guarantee it," Lu Chen said with a fist-glowing expression. "He's inviting you to the Longhu Club." Yanjika was so smart that she had already guessed it. "Yes." Hands on hips expression, Lu Chen replied. After sending this, he calmed down and replied, scratching head expression, "I seem to have agreed directly. I haven't discussed with you and haven't asked my master, this should be the so-called evil disciple." "Ha, the excited Lu Cheng is so cute," Yanjika sent a rubbing head expression. "You know my opinion." "Of course I agreed." Lu Cheng replied, snickering expression, "Actually, I was quite afraid that I would encounter a difficult problem. If the Dragon King invited me on one hand and our grandpa asked me to go to the Shushan study as a guest elder, what should I do? What would you do?" Rolling eyes expression, Yanjika replied. "Of course I would follow my wife." Lu Cheng replied without hesitation. Yanjika replied, covering mouth expression, "Actually, the Shushan study is a righteous sect. It's one thing to look up to you, but if they really want to invite you to be a guest elder, they won't be able to lower themselves to do so. It would seem that the sect has no successor. Anyway, there's still my brother, Senior Qing Song and the rest." Yes. After sharing with his little fairy, Lu Cheng barely calmed down his excitement. He chatted with Xiao Chang, Kai Zongming and the rest for a while. When he went to the washroom, he called his master. "Hey, you're finally willing to call me?" Gizershur said sarcastically. Lu Cheng laughed dryly and went straight to the point. "Master, the Dragon King just called me and asked me to go to the Longhu Club next year." What do you think if I don't go back to the Wiyue Club?" He hid the fact that he had already agreed to it. "Go. Of course you have to go. Your fire sect martial arts only have force and no moves. Don't you feel that it's very restrictive? When you go to the Longhu Club, make up for it. If there's a chance, learn all the unique skills of physical invulnerability and the forbidden sect." Gizershur said with saliva flying everywhere. Unique skills of physical invulnerability. Forbidden sect martial arts. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. "Master, do you have to be so straightforward? It sounds like you want to knock me out and send me there, my biological master." Gizershur coughed and said, "I'm doing this for your own good, you brat. There aren't many chances for you to learn the forbidden sect's martial arts. It's settled then. With Dragon King's pride, he's already called you personally. What else do you want?" Okay. Lu Chen was secretly relieved. Well, there might also be a shameless old guy who's good at pestering you in the next few days. He'll invite you under my name. You can just reject him directly. Don't talk nonsense with him. Gizershur thought of another matter. 2 days ago, he accidentally let slip that his disciple would most likely not return to the Wiyue Club. Who's that? Lu Chen was stunned. Gizershur sighed. "I was young and immature. I made friends with that old guy by mistake. It's still a headache to this day. Anyway, don't give him a chance to take advantage of you. After that, he hung up the phone and walked around his daughter's house looking for good wine. Lu Cheng was left in a daze at the bathroom door. Who could it be? Which force? These two doubts didn't last long. On the night of October 1st, the official start of the holiday, Lu Cheng received a call from the old guy. The other party smiled very warmly. Lu? Yes, who is this? Lu Cheng said politely. I'm a good friend of your master's for many years. My surname is Wu. I'm currently working in the Haiyuan Club. Jiang Wo has mentioned me to you, right? The voice on the other side didn't sound too old. There was a hint of leisure in the mellow voice. A little. Senior Wu Maoyan, right? Lu Cheng roughly knew who it was when he heard the words, Haiyuan Club and surname Wu. Which first pin mighty ones participating in professional competitions weren't famous? Yes, it's me, the empty nest old man, Wu Maoyan laughed. Lu, are you interested in joining our Haiyuan Club? Although we haven't entered the top circle yet, we'll be there soon. I can still fight for another 5 years. The witch has already grown up. The cheetah has almost agreed to join us. Li Xiaoyuan will come next year or the year after. If you're willing to join us, you'll definitely be a core member that will focus on nurturing. You can learn whatever you want from the club's martial arts. We'll give you a basic salary based on physical invulnerability standards. If you want a house and a car, just say the word. Remembering his master's teachings, Lu Cheng interrupted him. Senior Wu, I've already promised the Longhu Club. If I don't return to the Wuyue Club, I'll join them. The Longhu Club? That's fast. Wu Maoyan muttered. Lu, you have to consider this carefully. You're just one of the reserves in the Longhu Club. But at Haiyuan, you'll be the only one. To put it bluntly, they're big and have strict rules. Even if you're a heavenly son of the era, you'll still have to lower your head. Hee, what are their conditions? I don't know yet. Lu Cheng answered honestly. He had completely forgotten about this when he made the promise. As for the fact that he hadn't signed the contract, he had to keep his word in the martial arts world. You don't know? Lu, this means that they don't value you. What you need the most at your current stage is to be valued. Wu Maoyan perked up. Lu Cheng replied immediately. The Dragon King called me. That's enough, right? The Dragon King. Wu Maoyan fell silent. Yes. Lu Cheng confirmed. Phew, Senior Wu won't pester me anymore, right? The Dragon King's moves are indeed fast, accurate, and ruthless. Wu Maoyan sighed and smiled again. Lu, you really have to consider this carefully. The Dragon King is too arrogant and not easy to get along with. He rambled on for a full half an hour before Lu Cheng finally got rid of him. He felt both physically and mentally exhausted. What a persevering old man. Luckily, my willpower is strong and I'm not swayed. On the 2nd of October, Lu Cheng returned to Shushan and participated in the moving. He carried a cabinet in one hand and walked into the freight elevator under the dumbfounded gazes of the onlookers. Seriously, it's not like we don't have money. Why can't we just hire a moving company? Why must we find a car and move by ourselves? Lu Cheng cursed Qi Fang in his heart as he moved the cabinet into his new home. At this moment, his phone rang. The screen lit up and the words, hipster, appeared. Ha, hipster, what's up? Lu Cheng answered the call happily. And Chaoyang laughed. I heard that you won't be returning to Wuyue Club next year. Probably. Lu Cheng didn't try to hide it. I'm here on behalf of my master. Xinghai Club is waiting for you. And Chaoyang went straight to the point. Queen of Thought's invitation. Lu Cheng felt smug for a few seconds and replied sincerely, I've already promised the Dragon King. Dragon King? And Chaoyang was shocked. After a while, he laughed. Then I won't be long-winded about the conditions. How are you doing at Xinghai Club recently? Lu Cheng changed the topic and asked casually. It's all right. Every few days, someone will use you, Renli, and priest to educate me like other people's children. And Chaoyang replied casually. After chatting for a while, he hung up the phone. The phone screen showed the time and the person of the call. 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Husky. Chapter 5:13. Lu Qing put down his phone and thought of the calls he had received in the past few days. He felt a little emotional and then realized something was missing. Yes, neither the Wuyue Club nor the Ice Gods sect had contacted him. Were they blocked by Master, or had they acquiesced to this situation and development? Lu Qing shook his head and laughed. He didn't think about it anymore and continued his moving business. He followed the rented van back and forth several times and became the main labor force today. He lifted the marble table with one hand that could only be lifted by 4 people. Lu Jisheng and Qi Fang sighed that practicing martial arts was so good. Lu Yanwei, Lu Yuanchang, and the others who came to help didn't dare to help. They could only carry some small items and dutifully cheer him on and yell, 666, a few times. When it was close to noon, Lu Qing entered his original home again to see if he had missed anything. The living room was mostly empty and full of junk. The cabinet, the TV, the single sofa, and the coffee table that had been used for many years were missing. At first glance, Lu Qing suddenly felt a sense of loss. He had a subtle feeling of leaving his hometown. In his opinion, the new home was full of unfamiliarity. Walking in it, there was no sense of familiarity. However, this was the place where he had lived for more than 10 years. It was a place that was engraved into his bones. It was the home in his heart. Sigh. He sighed and walked around the living room, half checking and half reminiscing. He stopped at the door of the master bedroom and looked around. The wardrobe and desk were gone. Only the old clothes that his mother had finally abandoned were left on the floor. Looking at the empty space, he pictured the big mottled bed painted with red paint. Lu Cheng's expression was a little complicated. That was the bed that his mother had given to him when he married her. It had accompanied her throughout her marriage, witnessed his birth and growth, and witnessed his learning and hard work. When they got married, they didn't have enough resources. His mother was born in a rural family and naturally didn't have a dowry. For this reason, his omnipotent grandfather found wood and built the bed and furniture by himself, which were still in use today. Gazing deeply at her, Lu Qing came to the door of his room. Because the new house had bought a double bed and a sofa bed, his old bed was still quietly in the same place, just like it had been for so many years. However, the desk beside it, the bookshelf opposite it, and the wardrobe were all gone. Thinking of his tumultuous childhood, of his myopic youth who would sneakily read novels with the lamp under his quilt at night, of his youthful holidays where he slept until noon, and of Yan Zhika lying there under the sun, of his pious and surging years of growth, Lu Cheng had a moment of unwillingness to part with this place and his old friend. It was like saying goodbye to a childhood friend whom he had known for many years. I really want to bring it to my new home. Lu Qing took out his phone, took a picture of his memory, and sent it to Yan Zhika before she fell asleep. It seems like I don't have a home anymore, there was no past. Rub your head. When my family moved to this place, I also felt uncomfortable for a long time. Well, after 2 weeks, I got used to it and accepted it. Yan Zhika sent an emoji with tears of laughter. With Dad and Mom, I soon felt like home. Okay. Lu Qing casually picked up the few old books that he didn't want before, looked around the room one last time, and quietly closed the door, bidding farewell to the home that existed in his memories for more than 10 years. Taking the elevator to the new house, he took a shower to wash away the sweat and dirt, and changed out of the stained clothes. He reached out to wipe his hair, and white steam rose. Passing by the kitchen, Lu Qing heard his father chatting with his grandparents in the living room, and saw his mother busily preparing the dishes. According to the customs of Shushan, on the first day of moving, one had to treat one's family and friends to a meal. Mom, why go through so much trouble? Can't you just book 2 tables outside? Lu Qing leaned against the kitchen door and said disapprovingly. Qi Fang looked up and glared at him, not caring that he was the heavenly son of the age. What's the point of not having a warm stove at home? Mom, when it comes to customs, it's fine if it's convenient, but it doesn't matter if it's inconvenient. Everything should be done by yourself. Otherwise, it will become a feudal superstition. Lu Qing persuaded again. You're the one who's superstitious. Qi Fang's voice rose, then softened. Today, there are only relatives on both sides, not many people. Okay, Mom, I'll help you. Lu Qing walked into the kitchen, took an apron and put it on. You'll help? Go, go, go. Go out and chat with your grandparents. Don't make trouble here. Your grandma and the rest will come to help later. Qi Fang didn't look happy at all. She waved her hand disdainfully, as if she was shooing flies. My real mother. Lu Qing grabbed the knife and squeezed in front of the chopping board. Mom, I've cooked a few meals in America. Also, people who practice martial arts have good knife skills. Really? Qi Fang put down the kitchen knife and watched in surprise as her son chopped melons, vegetables, bones and meat. Not bad. She praised in her heart, but that wasn't the main point. She didn't hide her curiosity and asked, You guys really cooked in America? You were in charge? Lu Qing thought for a while and said, Usually, I just cut the vegetables and Ko was in charge of cooking. Qi Fang smiled and nodded with satisfaction. You guys live a decent life. However, you have to take the initiative to cook some dishes. Don't let Ko do it. It's too smoky, she rambled on for a long time. Okay, I'll watch carefully later. When Lu Qing answered, his hands didn't stop at all. The sound of the chopping continued. After a while, he finished preparing most of the dishes. Seeing that the countertop was full, he stopped and watched his mom cook. I'm studying hard. He took a picture and sent it to Ko. I miss your food. Yenjika, who had washed up and was lying in bed, suddenly felt hungry. After watching for more than 10 minutes, Lu Qing volunteered to cook the familiar stir-fried beef. He handed the phone to Qi Fang and said, Mom, help me take a video later. Just press here and don't let go. Yes, here. It will stop by itself when you let go. Seriously, what's there to take? Qi Fang muttered and aimed the phone at her son. She couldn't understand young people nowadays. Taking videos while cooking. Mom, you can press the button now. Lu Qing poured the beef into the oil and started to stir-fry. When it was time for the side dishes, he deliberately showed off. He held the pot with one hand and threw the food like a chef. Not only that, but he also controlled his strength precisely. Sometimes he threw the word one, sometimes he threw the word chuan, and sometimes it was raining flowers. After putting the fragrant dishes on the plate, Lu Qing took back the phone from his stunned mom and sent the video to Yenjika. Not long after, the girl said with a blank expression, I've never seen such a boring person like you. What the hell is this fancy stir-frying? Qi Fang had already come to her senses. She pushed her son out of the kitchen angrily. Go, go, go and play by yourself. She doesn't know how to appreciate. Lu Qing spread his hands and shook his head in amusement. He walked to the living room. At this moment, he suddenly felt a sense of belonging to this place. When Lu Cheng's second uncle, second aunt, and grandma arrived and went into the kitchen to help, the warm stove wine was finally ready before 1 o'clock. As there were many people, they were divided into 2 tables. One was the dining room for those who liked to drink, and the other was the coffee table, sofa, and low chairs for those who were focused on eating. As the head of the household, Lu Jisheng raised his wine glass and said a few words. After that, everyone congratulated him on moving into the house. After eating and drinking, some people played mahjong, some played pig trotting, some played fight the landlord, some played chess, and some played online games. They had a pleasant afternoon. After dinner, Lu Cheng's grandpa and grandpa were sent home by his uncle who didn't drink. His grandparents who came from Ningxue stayed in the guest room. Qi Yunfei and Chen Xiaoxiao stayed in the guest room. His aunt Qi Yan and uncle Chen Wenguo slept in the separate study. There was a sofa that could be folded into a bed. Lu Cheng looked at the unfamiliar sofa in the living room and was speechless for a long time. First day in a new house and I'm going to be a director again. Covering face expression and sighing expression, he said to his wife. Yan Zhika, who was in class, replied with 3 words, laugh out loud. On October 3rd, Lu Cheng practiced as usual. In his spare time, he went to Qin Rui's martial arts club. At night, he took the high-speed train back to Songqing because the martial arts club would resume the special training the next morning. At 8:00 the next day, in the martial arts arena of Songqing University, the special training team, which had swelled to more than 20 people, finally saw Coach Lu after a long time. Some people even took photos and posted them on Weibo and WeChat Moments. They were so moved that their eyes were brimming with tears. After finishing the preliminary training, Lu Cheng put his hands behind his back and asked everyone to come out and practice one by one. After that, he said, Senior Li Mao, Talker, He Zi, and De Li, you can participate in the professional ranking event at the end of October. Jin Lu, Jin Yan, you can go too. You may not pass, but it's good to have some experience. As for the newcomer Deng Yang, he had gotten the professional 9th pin certificate before entering university. As for the 8th pin Dan stage, he couldn't be rushed. Chapter 5:14. Hearing Lu Cheng's words, Li Mao and Kai Zhongming were delighted, as if they had been waiting for a long time. They were strong enough to get the certificate in April, but they were delayed by the national competition and had to wait until now. As the defending champion, Songqing University was undoubtedly the seed of the division and would enter the group directly. They would only appear on the stage of the new university martial arts competition at the end of November. On the other hand, He Zi and Wang Dali were both excited and apprehensive. At times, they felt that they had a high chance of getting the professional 9th pin certificate if they gave it a try. At other times, they felt that they were still lacking and that it would be safer to wait for another half a year. There was no need for them to be tortured. As for Jin Lu and Mu Jinyan, they had an indifferent attitude. To them, the chances of them breaking through the encirclement were slim. Senior Lu, Coach Lu, we haven't fought in a long time. I would like to apply for actual combat in the team to prepare for the ranking event. Wang Dali, who looked like someone released from a labor camp, raised his hand and suggested. Sure. Lu Cheng nodded with a smile without hesitation. With his current strength, he was more than enough to be their referee. I'll sign up first. I want to challenge He Zi. Wang Dali stepped out first. His eyes were bright and his tone was resolute, as if he had been planning this for a long time. Why? Lu Cheng blurted out in surprise. Why does it feel like there's a grudge between them? Wang Dali replied with grief and indignation, the last few times we played werewolf, she would always be the first to kill me. I can't play this stupid game anymore. As soon as he finished, He Zi, whose hair had just reached her ears, laughed with the other female team members. Who asked someone to look so fierce? What a deep hatred. Lu Cheng sighed with emotion. Coach Lu, Senior Lu, we'll play this afternoon and then have a meal together. Do you want to join us? He Zi asked expectantly. The freshmen who had just joined the special training team, regardless of gender, immediately focused their eyes on Lu Cheng. The National Day holiday, special training in the morning, nothing in the afternoon. Feeling their expectant and inviting gazes, Lu Cheng thought for a while and said, I won't be joining the game. I have something to do in the afternoon. In the morning, he had to take on a part-time job as a coach, and especially spare some time to video chat with Ku, who was in her free state at night. He had almost no time to practice, so he had to make up for it in the afternoon. This would be his domestic work and rest routine for the next 1 or 2 years, and it would not be easily changed unless there was an emergency or too big of an accident. When everyone's expressions turned to disappointment and frustration, he added with a smile, that's right. No problem. Once you've made the reservation, give me the time and place. Okay, okay. Deng Yang and the others answered in unison and became excited again. In the following actual combat training and daily cultivation, they were full of motivation and enthusiasm. When it was almost 11 o'clock, Lu Qing made sure that Yan Zhika had finished her homework and reports. He corrected each of them and asked them to practice in groups. Then he entered the locker room and shared all the changes in the martial arts club with Yan Zhika in a quiet environment. After the chat came to an end, he walked out and planned to go to the cafeteria to fill his stomach while the girl was washing her face. He would go back to the dorm and continue the video call. At this moment, a beautiful freshman wearing a white martial arts suit with black edges ran over from the female locker room. Her eyes were full of excitement and her cheeks were red as she said, "Coach Lu, can I have your autograph?" "No, 2 autographs." "Okay." Lu Qing usually wouldn't refuse such a request. He smiled and said, "Call me senior brother Lu. Coach Lu has already gone offline." "Look, it's already past 12. The girl was amused and relaxed a lot. She unfolded the white t-shirt in her left hand and handed the pen to him. She said crisply, "Senior brother Lu, please sign here first." Lu Qing didn't say anything. He picked up the pen and wrote his name on the front of the shirt. "Damn it, I haven't signed for a long time. I'm rusty now." "Although I'm not rusty, it doesn't look good either." After putting away the t-shirt, the girl took out a talismanic necklace from her pocket. Its pendant was golden, like some mythical beast in legends. "Senior brother Lu, can I engrave my name on the pendant?" The first-year girl nervously took out the pen used for micro-engraving. What the hell? At this moment, Lu Qing was dumbfounded. This was the first time he had seen such a request for an autograph. The student girl's lips trembled as she stammered, "My cousin asked me to help her. She's very superstitious and her luck isn't very good. She's always unlucky." "Senior brother Lu, don't you have the ability to reflect curses and bad luck?" She wanted to ask for a protective amulet with your signature, so that she could avoid disasters and protect herself. "There's such a thing." Lu Qing was dumbfounded and momentarily speechless. "Student, you can't be superstitious." Why does this sentence sound so familiar? "Senior brother Lu, if you're not willing, then forget it." The girl stole a glance at her idol and said in a stutter. Lu Qing came back to his senses and shook his head with a smile. "It's okay. Just this once." He took the micro-engraving pen, lowered his elbow and tightened his wrist. Channeling his strength, he engraved Lu Qing on the golden pendant and passed it to the first-year student. Thank you, senior brother Lu," the girl thanked him happily and excitedly. On the way back, she turned around and bowed her head slightly. At this time, more than half of the special training members had gathered and were planning to leave for the reserved cafe to play Werewolf Kill. Lunch would also be served there. "Senior brother Lu, bye-bye." They waved goodbye cheerfully, leaving Lu Qing alone. Sigh, it seems that in other people's eyes, I'm gradually not very sociable and don't like to participate in activities. Maybe they'll think that I'm getting more and more arrogant. Lu Qing shook his head and smiled, half self-deprecating and half lamenting. "I really don't have time, what are you laughing at?" Little Ming's voice came from the back of the locker room. Lu Qing turned his head and looked at Kai Zhongming, who had already changed his clothes. "I'm laughing at why you're not participating. Isn't that nonsense? Fang Yuan is leaving on the 7th. Kai Zhongming replied with a look of disdain. "I've told you 3 times and you can't even remember. Are you entering old age ahead of time? Really 3 times? Lu Qing racked his brain but couldn't find the corresponding memory. For a moment, he was at a loss. "Nope." Little Ming answered sincerely. "Come here, I promise I won't beat you to death," Lu Qing said, grinding his teeth. Kai Zhongming laughed and asked, "Cheng, what do you think is the probability of me getting a certificate in this ranking event?" "If you're lucky enough, you're basically guaranteed to get it." Lu Qing answered honestly. That's good. Don't you know how much effort it took me to resist showing off my strength when I was with my former classmates, friends, and relatives during the summer vacation? I can't just jump out and flex my muscles, kick the pillar, or say that I'm an expert now, right? How embarrassing. Kai Zhongming said with imagination running wild. When I get the certificate, I'll slap it in front of them and they won't have to say anything anymore. What's the difference between the two methods? Lu Qing asked, amused. Don't you think the latter method is more subtle? Kai Zhongming made a retracting gesture. I don't think so. They're both equally stupid. Lu Qing answered without hesitation. After joking and teasing each other, they left the martial arts arena. One went to the cafeteria, while the other went to the school cafeteria to meet up with Fang Yuan. The next few days went by as usual. Lu Qing booked an early flight to America so that he could make it back in time to supervise the ranking event. Smith hummed a soundless melody and walked into the office with light steps. During this time, he had been very relaxed. The tasks assigned to him were quite simple, so he didn't have to worry about them. What a wonderful life. Thank God. Amen. He had just made a cup of coffee and sat down when he suddenly received a call from the director, asking him to come over. What's the task this time? Smith knocked on his boss's door with curiosity and expectation. Monitor him. You should be very familiar with it. I don't need to say more, right? The director turned the computer screen around and a familiar face came into Smith's sight. Yellow skin, black hair, chiseled features, a smile on his face, and the word, danger, in red beside it. It was Lu Qing. Smith's eyes widened and his mouth opened little by little. He blurted out, why is he here again? Is there an end to this? In the following days, Lu Qing didn't make things difficult for Smith, who was on tenterhooks. He lived a peaceful life, kept a low profile, and didn't do anything out of line. In order to avoid the limelight, he planned to find a chance to challenge the Grandmaster of Martial Arts in the next semester. In the process, Kai Zhongming and Li Mao successfully obtained the professional 9th pin certificate. He Zi, after a tough battle, barely managed to obtain the certificate. Wang Dali, who was slightly weaker and unlucky, failed in the group stage. Jin Lu and Mu Jinyan were too far apart. It was purely based on experience. However, the addition of 4 professional 9th pin fighters, Deng Yang brought his own certificate, made the martial arts club in the limelight at Songqing University again. More students were willing to join the martial arts class. As a last resort, the martial arts class added 1, 3, and 5 for students who didn't make it to the next round. At the end of November, the new National University Martial Arts Competitions Division Group stage started. Songqing University's first opponent was the weaker Celestial Academy. Lu Qing, who came back from America for the 3rd time, didn't put himself in the lineup. He put the newcomer Deng Yang as a substitute. Even so, Li Mao, who was in charge of the field, didn't do much. Kai Zhongming, who dominated the conversation time, and the new calf, He Zi, almost completed 3 kills. On the first weekend of December, Songqing University welcomed its old rival, Shannon University Martial Arts Club. In the away team's locker room, Lin Xiaoji, who had a high ponytail, sighed and said, "Inhuman. How can we fight? Luckily, I said last year that we would wait for the year after next year. It should be next year. At that time, Peng Liyun will graduate and Lu Qing will enter the professional competition in advance. This is our chance." Before the competition started, she was already thinking about the next time. Mu Yu, old man Mu, glanced at her from the blessed Buddha beads, exquisite crosses, and other items. He fixed his eyes on the new collarbone necklace on Lin Xiaoji's neck. "Your amulet is rare?" He asked a question that had been bothering him for a while. Lin Xiaoji smiled proudly. "Yes, it's rare. There should be only one in the world. It's Lu Cheng's amulet that blocks bad luck." "What's that?" Mu Yu and Jean Dolly were confused. Lu Cheng's amulet. I asked someone to make a pendant of the sky-shaking roar. I asked my cousin who just entered Songqing University to get Lu Cheng to sign his name and bless it. It will definitely block bad luck. What theory is that? Mu Yu blurted out. Metaphysics theory. Lin Xiaoji answered confidently. I'm now a believer of Lu Cheng. Chapter 5:15. Considering Songqing University's current situation, there was no need to arrange a formation for the match against Shannon. As usual, Lu Cheng let Kai Zongming be the vanguard so that he could improve his verbal skills. In the middle, the newcomer Deng Yang would take the stage for more actual combat. However, unlike the previous match, Lu Cheng put himself in the starting lineup and stayed at the end without the slightest carelessness. After all, Mu Yu's supernatural ability was comparable to a Dan stage fighter, and he was unpredictable and hard to defend against. If he lost here and advanced to the next round as the second in the group, it was very likely that he would have to face Shan Bei in advance. Without Lin Ke, it would be difficult for him to win against Peng Liyun and Fang Zhirong on his own. Coming out of the locker room, Lu Cheng heard a tsunami of cheers before he had time to look around. Those were "Champion" and "Good luck." The crowd's will was strong enough to shake a mountain. This was the atmosphere of the home ground. Even the most indifferent people would feel their blood boiling in such a situation. The members of Songqing University Martial Arts Club waved at the same time to both sides, which brought more enthusiastic cheers. After a few steps, Lu Cheng glanced around and saw an acquaintance. It was Xu Rui, a reporter from Songqing TV station. She was wearing her usual business attire. Her neat and refreshing short hair was long enough to reach her shoulders, which added to her feminine charm and highlighted her delicate oval face. Huh. She's still a reporter. Huh. The logo on her microphone doesn't look like she's from Songqing TV station. Did she change jobs? Lu Cheng nodded at Xu Rui as a form of greeting, despite the doubts in his mind. Xu Rui adhered to the requirements of the interview and didn't disturb them before the match. She only responded with a smile. After a short wait, the referee stepped into the arena. The broadcast announced the names of both sides. The first round, Kai Zongming vs Lin Xiaoji. It said that Lin Xiaoji has touched the threshold of Dan's stage. If you raise your proud tail, you'll be embarrassed. Lu Cheng said to Talker, half teasing and half reminding him. Damn it. You're so misleading. Luckily I'm a gentleman. Kai Zongming said sarcastically. Don't worry. I'm the best at talking to girls. *CK dirty people see dirty things. Get out of here. Lu Cheng gave Little Ming a slap on his face and pushed him out of his seat. He didn't even need to do the fist bump to encourage him. Kai Zongming tidied up his clothes and hairstyle, then slowly walked up the stone steps and onto the arena. Then, he was a little dumbfounded to see Lin Xiaoji standing next to the competition supervisor, taking out one item after another, At the end, she even carefully undid the clavicle hanging around her neck and handed it to the supervisor, repeatedly reminding him not to lose it. After doing all this, Lin Xiaoji tied her ponytail a little higher and walked lightly to the opposite side of the enemy. She pointed to her sleeve and smiled proudly. Kai Zongming took a closer look and realized that there was a circle of words embroidered on it. The words, Taishang Lao Jun, were written on the front. As expected of a Grand Master of Metaphysics. For a moment, Little Ming felt like he had been defeated. The referee glanced at both sides, raised his right hand, and announced the start of the conversation. Kai Zongming relaxed and revealed a sincere and brilliant smile. Last year, our two clubs were in the same group. As a substitute of amateur second pin, I had the honor to witness the fight between you and senior brother Sun Jian. It was a very calm and friendly opening, and it sounded more like he was trying to strike up a conversation with a girl. The referee listened quietly from the side. Lin Xiaoji nodded with a smile and said nothing. At this moment, Kai Zongming suddenly changed the topic. At that time, you were already a top 9th pin fighter. Now, a year later, I, an amateur second pin, have gotten a professional ninth pin certificate. I think I'm strong, but you're still at the same level. Don't you feel ashamed? Don't you think it's time to re-examine whether you're suitable for the path of martial arts? You're only a junior. You still have time to focus on your studies. Similar words poured out endlessly, accompanied by a mocking expression. Even the referee had some doubts in his heart. Don't hit people in the face, don't expose people's shortcomings. Being humiliated like this, I definitely can't stand it. However, Lin Xiaoji raised the corner of her mouth and her expression didn't change. Even her eyes didn't show any sign of anger. I've met a strong opponent. Kai Zhongming pulled himself together and changed 3 strategies in a row. But his opponent remained calm and responded with a faint smile. Her self-restraint was off the charts. Soon, the 3-minute conversation was about to end. Lin Xiaoji raised her hand with a smile, put her fingers into her ears and slowly pinched out 2 earplugs. What the hell? Kai Zhongming's eyes bulged. He was dumbfounded on the spot. So I was playing the lute to a cow. You deserve earplugs consecrated by 9 eminent monks chanting scriptures. Lin Xiaoji snapped her fingers and flicked the earplugs out of the arena. They fell next to the referee. There were also words engraved on them. When put together, they read, "I'm not listening, I'm not listening." Isn't this against the rules? Kai Zhongming immediately turned his head and asked the referee. It's not a weapon, nor is it sharp or hard. Theoretically, it's no different from plugging your ears with your fingers, the referee explained. There's a difference. There's a big difference. If I saw her plugging her ears with her fingers, I would have stopped talking. Do you know how much effort I've wasted? Kai Zhongming was about to speak when he saw the referee raise his right hand and was about to swing it down. He quickly gathered his thoughts and turned his attention back to the match. In the following battle, Lin Xiaoji, who was already better than Kai Zhongming, displayed her tiger form, dragon form, snake form, and leopard form martial arts to the fullest. Her movements were smooth and controlled, making it difficult for Kai Zhongming, who couldn't achieve his strategic goal in the conversation time. Even if he had hundreds of tricks up his sleeve, he couldn't turn the tables and find an opportunity. After struggling for 2 or 3 minutes, he was defeated by a round of tremor punch. Ha, I told you. Don't be arrogant. Don't think that no one can defeat you in the conversation time. Facing the depressed little Ming, Lu Cheng, as his best friend, showed him what a friendship between men was. Get lost. Kai Zhongming replied in a bad mood. Then he fell into deep thought. Cheng, what if all the opponents in the future don't know their manners and plug their ears with their fingers? What should I do? Practice a martial art of the lion's roar style and become a human loudspeaker. The most basic way was to practice his inner strength and not pin his hopes on the conversation time. That makes sense. Kai Zhongming nodded thoughtfully and began to think about where he could get a similar martial art. At this time, Deng Yang, who had just entered the arena, had already started a fierce fight with Lin Xiaoji. The usually sunny young man had turned into a muscular barbarian with a jade-like complexion. Facing the enemy, he did not block, but only resisted and attacked. He had combined the quenching jade formula of the Shizhou sect and the 24 blizzard strikes into one. He was even fiercer than Lin Ke and Lu Cheng. He was like a human bulldozer. Lin Xiaoji, who was already in a tough battle, couldn't hold on any longer. She slowed down a bit and allowed Deng Yang to close in on her. She used her chest and shoulder to block a chopping punch and a tremor punch respectively. Bam, bam, bam. Deng Yang only protected his vital parts and attacked crazily. He successfully defeated Lin Xiaoji in the close-range combat, which he was best at. In the new round, he and Jean Dolly played a game of cat and mouse. They chased each other around the arena and bumped into each other occasionally. After a full 5 or 6 minutes, both of them were exhausted. Inevitably, they entered the close-range combat phase, which was Deng Yang's strength. The result was no surprise. After winning 2 rounds in a row, he finally faced the enemy's leading general, Bane Mu Yu. Instead of being afraid, he was eager to have a try. Begin. With the referee's announcement, Deng Yang took a step forward cautiously and steadily. However, at this moment, he felt a twitch in his weak calf. Before he could stabilize his foot, his ankle twisted to the side and deformed. As a top professional 9th pin fighter, he twisted his ankle on flat ground. Although his body was close to its limit, it was still incredible. With a twisted ankle, the bulldozer could no longer run and was completely passive. Soon, he was defeated by Old Man Mu. His supernatural ability seems to have gotten stronger again, and his martial arts skills seem to have improved quite a bit. His punches and kicks are starting to show signs of retracting. Not bad. Lu Cheng watched with interest. When Deng Yang returned, he slowly unzipped his pants, took off his jacket, and stood up. He didn't seem to mind giving the Bane a chance to catch his breath. At this moment, the martial arts arena exploded with voices. Everyone was shouting a name, calling the hero, the king of the arena. Lu Cheng. Chapter 5:16. Enjoying the cheers that were exclusive to him, Lu Cheng followed the path of glory to the arena unhurriedly. He stood in front of Mu Yu, who had aged prematurely. When the referee was about to raise his hand to announce the start of the 5th round, Lu Cheng suddenly smiled and looked at his opponent. Congratulations. You have hope of reaching the dance stage. Mu Yu was stunned for a few seconds. He asked blankly, you can tell. Lu Cheng had fought no less than 10 challenge tournaments since he vaguely felt like he was withdrawing his supernatural ability. Perhaps it was because his supernatural ability was too eye-catching that it attracted most of the attention. No one had noticed it. I've always had a good eye, Lu Cheng answered calmly. Seeing that Lu Cheng didn't mind giving Mu Yu more time to recover, the referee, who was weaker than him, didn't care and wasn't in a hurry to start the battle. An inhuman stage fighter had enough control to not cause any serious damage to a fighter who hadn't reached the dance stage or was only at professional 7th or 8th pin. Hearing this, Mu Yu sighed and said, that's right. It's all thanks to you. Why do you say that? Lu Cheng asked with interest. Last year's comedy was a wake-up call for him. Mu Yu smiled bitterly and answered calmly, yes. In the past few years, my supernatural ability was too dazzling. Not only did it blind my enemies, but it also blinded myself. Although I didn't use it much so that it wouldn't backfire on my friends, I always regarded it as my biggest reliance and the most fundamental thing. I had strong confidence in it and spent most of my energy on how to improve it and weaken its backfire. It wasn't until I met you and was rebounded with misfortune that I finally understood what it meant to be powerless. Only then did I truly wake up and strengthen my own training. Fortunately, it wasn't too late, and I barely managed to gain some results. However, whether I could reach the dance stage is still up for debate. It's funny to say that my supernatural ability actually improved because of this, breaking through my previous stagnation. It was completely out of my expectations, Lu Cheng nodded slightly. Before I reached the dance stage, my master said something similar. Mu Yu took a deep breath and turned his attention back to the match. He cupped his hands and said, although I have no hope of winning, I still want to learn from you. Please. Lu Cheng lowered his waist and sat down. He stretched out his left palm and got into a starting position. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. A year had passed, and everyone was no longer the same. In the following battle, Mu Yu didn't use misfortune. Although his supernatural ability had become stronger thanks to the improvement of his own realm and strength, his opponent's improvement was even more ridiculous. There was a huge gap between a prodigy and a beginner martial artist. In the end, thanks to Lu Cheng's cooperation, he used all his skills except for his supernatural ability. He displayed all the Xingyi skills he had learned to the extreme. He almost felt like he had been tempered into steel by his opponent's fists. After a moment of brilliance, he began to slide down. He took the initiative to stop and looked at Lu Cheng, who wasn't affected by him at all. He respectfully bowed and said, "Thank you for your advice." "I wouldn't dare," Lu Cheng replied with a smile. The audience was quite disappointed. They had taken out their phones early on, wanting to record a comedy. Unfortunately, Mu Yu knew his place and didn't let them do as they wished. Amid the applause, Lu Cheng left the ring and saw Shu Rui standing in front of him. "Hi, long time no see." The reporter girl with only one dimple smiled and waved her hand. "Maybe it's because you jumped ship." Lu Cheng made a joke. Shu Rui was calmer than she had been in the past 2 years. She smiled and said, "Actually, I have to thank you." "Oh, is today a collective thank you day?" Mu Yu and now Shu Rui. Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh and asked curiously, "Why? Didn't I do an exclusive interview and special program for you and the martial arts club? As you and Lin Kei become more and more famous, more and more people are looking for these resources. As for me, I'm not bad looking. Well, I'm not bad at all. I'm also good at martial arts. I've slowly accumulated some popularity and was spotted by the provincial TV station. I'm afraid I won't be a frontline reporter anymore in the future. If you're invited to any program, you have to do me a favor." Shu Rui didn't change her self-esteem. "Good martial arts? Is it the ability to tell cold jokes with brother-in-law?" Lu Cheng secretly ridiculed and replied in a good mood, "As long as I'm free." Shu Rui nodded with satisfaction and turned to gossip. "I've been paying attention in the last 2 matches. Didn't your girlfriend come? Does this count as an official interview?" Lu Cheng glanced at the cameraman beside Shu Rui. "Not really. We haven't filmed it yet." Shu Rui looked at Lu Cheng with a smile and waited for his answer. "Ko went to study in America." Lu Cheng answered concisely. "America? Is it going to be winter break soon?" Shu Rui rolled her eyes and pondered. She had considered studying abroad and had collected a lot of information. She had some understanding of this. "Yes, it'll be a week before Christmas. It'll be 4 weeks in total." Lu Cheng didn't hide his joy. However, after Ko came back, she had to stay at her grandparents' house for a few days in Zhenkei and Jiangnan's grandparents' house for a few days. She had to accompany her father-in-law and mother-in-law, and she had to keep in touch with her best friends. She didn't really have much time alone with him. After all, she had to participate in the prefectural competition here. She couldn't stay in Songqing all the time. "Yeah, it's okay. I can go back to Shoshan on Monday and Songqing on Friday. I can be a not-so-competent coach. They've already gotten used to Coach Lu's absence, just like how Smith is used to my presence." Just as he was thinking about this topic, Shu Rui suddenly exhaled and said with emotion, "If it weren't for you, I would feel that Songqing University Martial Arts Club has become unfamiliar. Compared to last year at this time, half of the members have left, right?" "Coach Sure, Lin Kei." "Oh right, how's Lin Kei's injury?" "I don't see any news on the internet. He started recovery training in August and recovered in November. He should be at the level of a strong 6 now." Lu Cheng answered honestly. This was all information he got from Ko. As teammates and relatives who had fought side by side, he had actually called to show concern for his brother-in-law. However, the whole process was very awkward. He was racking his brains to find a topic to talk about and only answered with, "Yes, yes, yes," and so on. The more Lu Cheng talked, the less confident he became. He had no choice but to hang up in a hurry. In this regard, Yan Zhika's words soothed his wounds. "My brother is already treating you as a friend by listening to you ramble on for a minute and not directly saying goodbye." After hearing Lu Cheng's description, Shu Rui smiled and said, "That's good. I'm happy that everyone is getting better." "Reporter Shu, you don't feel right. You're a bit of a hipster." "However, this has nothing to do with me." Lu Cheng pointed to his teammates. "Let's do the official interview. They're all waiting." "Okay." Shu Rui changed the topic to the new university martial arts competitions. This year, the strong and the weak are too obvious. The other contestants can only look up to you guys at the inhuman stage. However, it's not without suspense. For example, you guys will definitely meet Shan Bei in the top 4 round robin of the division competition. Are you ready to fight with Peng Liyun before the national competition? It depends. Lu Qing didn't dare to say with certainty. Since the breakthrough of the ice mirror, his martial arts strength had taken a big leap forward. However, the improvement had been very slow. Even he, who had experienced the speed of a tortoise from a quasi-6 to an inhuman stage, almost couldn't adapt. Compared to now, he could be called a high-speed train. After more than 2 months, he had only become slightly stronger. According to the data, except for the freaks like the living Buddha and the warrior sage, most of the mighty ones with physical invulnerability were in a similar state when they were at the inhuman stage. Therefore, the earlier he reached the high pin and the more time he had to reach the physical invulnerability stage, the higher his chances. Well, I feel like I haven't settled down enough. While Shu Rui was interviewing Lu Cheng, the Shannon University team returned to the locker room after a short post-match interview. Lin Xiaoji carefully entered the bathroom. She took off her clothes and all her protective items, leaving only the collarbone necklace on her neck. She turned the tap to release hot water. While waiting for the temperature to rise, she held the sky-shattering Ho pendant with Lu Cheng's name engraved on it in one hand and put her hands together in front of her, chanting. After the ceremony, the temperature of the water was just right. She walked under the shower and felt her body instinctively relax. After a while of fear, Lin Xiaoji finished the shower without any mishap. Just as she was about to put on her clothes and go out, she suddenly heard the sound of footsteps and Jean Dali's shout from the opposite side. "What's wrong?" Lin Xiaoji raised her voice and asked. "Nothing, I just did a split." Jean Dali replied with annoyance. "Poor thing." Lin Xiaoji nodded her head sadly and covered her mouth to show sympathy. After a few seconds, she finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Believe in Lu Cheng, avoid bad luck. Whoever uses it knows. After that, Songqing University's journey was smooth sailing and they advanced triumphantly. Under Yan Zhika's witness, they once again entered the top 4 round robin. Their first opponent was the Shanbei University Martial Arts Club. On Christmas afternoon, Lu Cheng, who was pretending to be a couple but actually a couple, suddenly felt his phone vibrate. He picked it up and saw that it was from Priest Peng Liyun. Lu Cheng whispered to Yan Zhika, then picked up the phone. "Hey, Priest, how come you're free to call me?" Peng Liyun smiled. "I just wanted to let you know that I probably won't be in the next match. We'll fight again in April next year." "To settle down?" Lu Cheng asked thoughtfully. "Aren't you there too?" Peng Liyun replied leisurely. After that, both of them laughed at the same time. They had a tacit understanding. Peng Liyun hadn't fought since the King of Youth Pro League. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, had only played 2 games of guiding chess since the end of the 2 unknown actual matches in America. After putting down the phone, he was about to tell Yan Zhika about what had just happened when he suddenly received a message from the military contact, Rapid March. "There's progress on the wholeness formula. P.S. Looking for a recommendation on Monday." Chapter 5:17. Lu Cheng perked up when he heard that there was some progress on the wholeness formula. He immediately sensed that something was amiss and quickly typed, "Is there anything missing?" Otherwise, it wouldn't be progress, but already in his hands. Also, he must have something else to say to me at this juncture. Rapid March replied quickly, "The wholeness formula doesn't belong to the extreme Hadis sect. It was coincidentally obtained by Muko Yamashita when he was buying an antique. After a few months of hard work, he finally relented and was willing to accept the proposal of exchanging the swordsman formula for the wholeness formula. However, there is a condition. He wishes to challenge you to a duel in a private setting with no spectators. Both parties will appoint a referee. He chooses the venue and you decide the time, but it's best if it's within a month. A few months of hard work. Lu Qing suddenly smelled a thrilling scent when he saw these words. Although it was an equivalent exchange in the end, Muko Yamashita must have gone through a lot of scheming and espionage to agree. It definitely wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface. During the King of Youth Pro League, I was already able to defeat Muko Yamashita even before I reached the inhuman stage. Now that 4 months have passed and it's obvious that I've stabilized, he still dares to challenge me. I'm afraid he must have encountered something else and is more confident. After a few seconds of silence, Lu Qing replied quickly, "All right then. Let's do it on the 20th of January. To be honest, this interrupted his consolidation and accumulation of strength midway and left him lacking in his state of mind. However, gathering the 9 words formula was more important than healing his master's old injury and Ku's health. He was willing to compromise for this. Besides, when I go to America in February to spend the new year with Ku, I'll start looking for opportunities to challenge grandmasters of martial arts as a warm-up for the nationals in April. It's fine if it's half a month earlier." Rapid March replied concisely, "Then I'll pass on your message to Muko Yamashita." Lu Qing put down his phone, condensed his voice, and shared the 2 matters with Yen Jika. Muko Yamashita has some confidence now. The girl stirred the milk in her cup thoughtfully. But choosing a private setting and rejecting the spectators shows that he's not that confident. This matter would be arranged by the military. The referee would most likely be a physical invulnerability mighty one, so she was relatively assured. "I think so too." Lu Qing laughed and said, "If he doesn't improve, I won't be interested in fighting with him again." He did not mention that it had interrupted his meditation. Yes. You still have to be careful of the location he chooses. The home field advantage is no joke. I'll help you find out which environment is most suitable for the martial arts of the extreme Hada sect. Yen Jika analyzed excitedly. In the end, she pounded the table lightly and said, "How infuriating. I can't watch the fight live. Cheer for my Cheng. That's why I set the date after you start school." Lu Qing said with a smile, "We can't waste our time together. You don't even blush when you say mushy things now." Yen Jika deliberately widened her eyes and said, "Just like how a certain someone is becoming more and more natural when talking dirty." Lu Qing teased, preparing himself for a beating. "I didn't." Yen Jika was both embarrassed and annoyed. She turned sideways and elbowed Lu Qing with the strength of a kitten. Since they were in a public place like the dessert shop, she stopped flirting and turned to look at Lu Qing. "Qing, I think the wholeness formula is a clue. With the military and resources over there, if there are any remaining 9 words formulas in China, they should have already been found. There have been too many periods of war in our history. It's normal for things to end up in Japan, Korea, Miluo, and other places with similar cultures." She could see that Lu Qing cared a lot about the 9 words formulas. Naturally, she wanted her husband to get what he wanted. "That's true. When I go to Japan this time, I'll communicate with the military. It'll be much better than me doing it alone." Lu Qing had long realized the limitations of a martial artist. Without a corresponding supernatural ability, professional matters should be left to the professionals. The young couple chatted happily on this topic until the evening when Gu Shuang called. They went to meet up and taste the pot dish recommended by this local tyrant. It came from Guangnan and had been localized and improved. It was quite suitable for the taste of Gaofan people, but there were not many who could do it well. Yes, Lu Qing and Yen Jika came to Gaofan yesterday to spend Christmas Eve. In the small private room, Gu Shuang took off her black down jacket and fixed her wavy hair. She sat down and snickered at the couple. "Should I say Merry Christmas Eve?" It was Christmas Day. Yen Jika's pretty face flushed red. She pretended not to care and snorted. "Didn't you spend Christmas Eve with your boyfriend?" "No, I broke up with him yesterday." Gu Shuang answered with a smile, not a hint of sadness. She wore light makeup and seemed to have done some makeup. Her eyes were more delicate and charming than before. So soon? It's only been 2 months, right? Yenjika blurted out in surprise. I don't feel anything for him anymore. He's not enough for me to stay for long. Gu Shuang seemed to be talking about going to the supermarket to buy fruits. Lu Cheng was speechless. He couldn't understand her world. He's not manly. He likes to hang around me, but he's not romantic at all. He's not like your Cheng, who rushed to America to celebrate your birthday and give you a surprise. Sigh, comparisons are odious. Gu Shuang skillfully changed the topic to Yenjika. December 9th was the girl's birthday. Since she was going back to China for the holidays, and Lu Cheng had only left America at the end of November, they agreed to have a video call and express gift. However, Lu Cheng secretly booked a ticket. After the competition on December 7th, they set off again the next day. After more than 10 hours of bumpy flight, they landed in front of a confused Smith. Yenjika didn't notice because there was internet access in the cabin. On the day of her birthday, she was surprised to see that Lu Cheng's background was her own lawn. While feeling touched and happy, she mercilessly punished Lu Cheng for his prodigal behavior. She punished Lu Cheng until he was beaming with joy. She also showed off their affection in her circle of friends and on Twitter, which made Gu Shuang and Song Li both envious and amazed. It was said that Du Liu lamented other people's children many times because of this. What surprise! It's more like a shock. You don't listen to me at all and act on your own. Yenjika rolled her eyes at Lu Cheng happily. This was also what she said when she showed off their affection. Girls really don't mean what they say sometimes. Well, men are the same. Lu Cheng tried his best to remain silent while the two girls were chatting. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Gu Shuang clapped and laughed. The food is here. I'm starving. After that, she shouted to the outside, you can come in. With a creak, the door of the private room opened. A well-dressed and average-looking boy appeared. He looked at Gu Shuang with bloodshot eyes. Shuang, why did you break up? Why are you here? Gu Shuang frowned. She got up and tried to push the boy out of the private room. Didn't I tell you? I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything anymore. The boy stared at Gu Shuang and muttered to himself, but everything was fine the day before yesterday. Did I do something wrong? I seem to be watching a melodramatic scene play out in front of me. Lu Cheng laughed and shook his head. He turned to look at Ko, only to see her face full of disappointment. She almost covered her face and sighed. The couple really couldn't interfere in this kind of thing. They didn't know how to either. After arguing for a while, Gu Shuang saw that the boy was difficult to deal with. She put on a serious face and said, you go back first. We'll talk tomorrow. Seriously, you're disturbing my mood for dinner. Tomorrow. The boy was absent-minded. His eyes suddenly showed some evil. I didn't believe what others said about you. I always thought you were a very simple and kind girl. It turns out you're just playing around. You don't have feelings at all. After listening to him, Gu Shuang's face turned cold. She replied with disdain, yes, I'm that kind of person. Bitch, you bitch. The boy suddenly took out a dagger from his pocket and stabbed it between Gu Shuang's chest and abdomen. The polished metal reflected a cold light under the lights. At this moment, the world seemed to slow down. Extreme fear emerged in Gu Shuang's heart. She couldn't dodge and could only watch the dagger get closer and closer. Her mind seemed to be able to imagine the severe pain that would follow, and the scream in her throat was ready to be released. Just as she was at her most desperate, a chopstick suddenly flew over and hit the side of the dagger, sending it flying and stabbing into the wall, shaking and trembling. When the boy's killing intent exploded, Lu Cheng sensed it. He picked up the chopstick and flicked it. Then he stepped on the ground and rushed out. He subdued the boy with one hand. Yenjika fell behind and held Gu Shuang. Call the police. Lu Qing turned to look at his wife and her best friend and said calmly. Gu Shuang was trembling with fear. Hearing this, she calmed down a little. She hurriedly returned to her original position and chose to call the police. When they came out of the police station, Yenjika stared at her and said, "Why are you still pleading for him?" Gu Shuang answered with trembling lips, I think I'm also in the wrong, you know it too." Yenjika seemed to have turned into Gu Shuang's mother. Some people can afford to play with, while others can't. If you don't want to have a good relationship, don't provoke others. If Qing wasn't here today, your parents would have burned incense for you. I was wrong. I repent. Gu Shuang raised 3 fingers and begged her with fear. Stay with me tonight. I don't dare to be alone. My parents are not here, okay? Yenjika turned to Lu Qing helplessly. I suddenly regret saving her. Lu Qing sent a message to the girl and made a joke. Don't worry. I won't fight with you for cuckoo. I'm not afraid as long as you're in the same room with me. Gu Shuang forced a smile at Lu Qing. Before that, let's eat first. They didn't even have time to enjoy the potted vegetables. You still know hunger. Yenjika stared at her again. Gu Shuang couldn't help but shrink her body. After everything was done, they entered the Gu villa. Yenjika and Lu Qing stayed in the guest room next to Gu Shuang's. Sigh, only Song Li is normal among your best friends. Lu Qing hugged the girl and sighed. Shuang was hurt by a man and doesn't believe in relationships anymore. Yenjika explained again. Don't date if you don't believe it. Lu Qing suggested. But, she seems to be eager to be in a relationship, but because she has no confidence in the future, she always chooses to break up when the relationship is at its strongest. Yenjika analyzed Gu Shuang's mentality. Lu Qing's mouth twitched. This is an illness that needs to be treated. Well, I'll kidnap her to see a psychiatrist these days. Yenjika actually agreed with Lu Qing's nonsense. On the other hand, Gu Shuang was writing in her diary with lingering fear. I feel like I deserve it. I have to pay attention to my breakup strategy in the future. Well, I have to let the boy initiate the breakup. When the time comes, he'll become more and more stubborn, clingy, unreasonable every day. I don't believe any man can stand it. The next day, she told her best friend her thoughts. Yenjika only asked one question, which made her speechless. What if there really is someone who can stand it until you can't pretend anymore? Then I'll accept it. After a long time, Gu Shuang answered blankly. This episode didn't affect Lu Qing. The round robin of the top 4 began as usual. Songqing University won 2 and lost 1. Once again, they qualified for the national competition as the second place. Yenjika returned to America in mid-January to prepare for the upcoming new semester. Before they knew it, it was already the 19th of January. Chapter 518. Haidong Airport, Terminal T1. Carrying his backpack, Lu Qing saw the military representative for this trip to Japan at the designated spot. He didn't need to talk to the military representative because he knew him. He was a middle-aged man with deep eye sockets, dark fire in his eyes, and silver strands of hair. Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame. Hello, Senior, greeted Lu Qing with a smile. Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame nodded slightly in response, maintaining his usual cold demeanor. With his experience of participating in the King of Youth League and traveling to and from America, Lu Qing didn't need anyone to guide him through the checkpoint. He boarded a Japanese Airlines plane with Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame. Senior, the items inscribed with the wholeness formula have fallen into Dongying. Could it be the same for the confrontation formula, formation formula, and array formula? It might not be Japan. It could be Korea, Miluo, or even Lijiapa. Lu Qing recalled his conversation with Yenjika and took the initiative to mention this to Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame. Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame nodded slightly. They have made similar speculations and even have some clues. We can't rule out the possibility that the item was sold to America. He's indeed a professional. Whatever Kuan I can think of, they've already thought of it. Lu Qing smiled. Then I'm relieved. At this moment, Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame looked ahead and threw out a sentence casually. Muko Yamashita's 7 Sins Hadu has a breakthrough in terms of killing intent. It's the killing intent that's getting stronger. Lu Qing tilted his head to look at his senior and tried to probe further. However, he realized that Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame had already closed his eyes, indicating that he didn't want to communicate. After a while, the plane rolled out and took off. As there was internet access in the cabin, Lu Qing turned on his phone and told Yan Zhika the information that Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame had just mentioned. It was noon in China and evening in America. Yan Zhika replied quickly. Hands crossed, chin in hand, deep in thought expression, she said, "This is a little different from our previous guess." According to her and Lu Cheng's initial guess, for a martial arts sect that worshipped extreme ideologies and emotions, places with spiritual symbols could stimulate a martial artist's potential and allow them to perform moves that they wouldn't normally be able to complete. Therefore, Muko Yamashita was likely to choose the highest dojo of the extreme Hadu sect or a shrine that symbolized a certain Japanese will. But from the looks of it, the opponent's home ground was unexpected. What kind of places do you think can increase the killing intent effectively? Lu Qing asked thoughtfully. Yan Zhika sent an emoji of rolling its eyes and said, "The source of hatred? Ancient battlefields left behind by massacres. Is it some remote shrine? I'm leaning towards the ancient battlefield. It's not hard to find in Japan." Lu Qing made his own guess. After discussing for a while, Yan Zhika gave him a pile of information about the extreme Hadu sect that involved killing intent. In the end, she changed the topic and talked about the ending of the previous incident. Because of Shuang's pleading and the ambiguity of the key testimony, the boy was determined to be provoking trouble, not attempted murder. At least she still has some conscience. Covering face and sighing expression, said Lu Qing. In the previous incident, the boy was guilty of going to extremes, but Gu Shuang also had to bear a large part of the responsibility. If she continued to be like this, sooner or later, something would happen, even if her father spent money to hire bodyguards for her. Yeah, she talked to the boy. I'm not sure what they talked about, but he didn't seem to be as angry as before. Yan Zhika replied, "Sometimes, I want to study psychology and pull Shuang, Sister Jingjing, and my brother back on the right track. Especially that brat. Every time I'm so angry that I want to cut ties with her, but I also feel that I shouldn't give up on her. Sai, Cheng, why do you think there are so many mentally ill people around me? Maybe it's to accumulate good karma." Lu Qing couldn't explain this phenomenon. After chatting for more than half an hour, Yan Zhika said goodnight and fell into a deep sleep. Lu Qing buried his head in the information and the videos he downloaded in advance. He didn't neglect the battle at all. During this process, the Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame opened his eyes and glanced sideways. He seemed to be talking to himself and sighing. "You guys are so good now. Decades ago, it wasn't easy to get the details of the enemy. This is relative. The enemy knows us better too." Lu Qing replied casually. The Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame didn't say anything and closed his eyes again. Not long after, the plane began to descend and landed in Kansai, Osaka. The Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame took Lu Qing to a remote place after a few transfers and experienced the subway and Shinkansen. At this time, Lu Qing was already dizzy. In the afterglow of the setting sun, he saw the surrounding desolation. He saw an abandoned Buddhist temple in front of him. Its horizontal inscribed board was long gone. There were only scattered stones and wood inside. It was silent and gloomy. Even when the sunset shone in, it showed a dark red color. Lu Qing closed his eyes and formed the ice mirror. Suddenly, he felt that the cold weather became even gloomier. The lake in his heart was filled with dark clouds and the smell of blood was faintly discernible. Ancient battlefield. He opened his eyes. Based on his previous speculation, he had a preliminary confirmation. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame nodded and didn't say anything. He walked slowly to the Buddhist temple that had the characteristics of the Warring States period. Lu Qing followed behind and carefully observed the surrounding situation. He could vaguely see that the abandoned Buddhist temple was originally used to suppress this ancient battlefield. There should be no lack of strange occurrences in this place in the past. He nodded thoughtfully. As they got closer to the Buddhist temple, he gradually saw the broken walls and Mukko Yamashita standing at the entrance of the hall. Compared to August, his body shape didn't change much. He was still as tall and muscular as before. His arms were long and his muscles were very exaggerated. However, his face had a hair-raising difference. His thick and rough eyebrows were cut in the middle. The turning point was cut with a knife and an axe, sharp and fierce. Beside Mukko Yamashita stood a skinny and short old man. He was wearing the dojo uniform of the extreme Hada sect. He had a conical bamboo hat on his head and used the shadow to cover half of his face. His eyes were dark red. When he saw the old man, Lu Cheng's body tensed up. He felt like a sparrow being stared at by a venomous snake or a goat being guarded by a tiger. He felt that this was the entrance to hell, the source of the killing intent. Just a little bit of it was enough to make him stiffen. His ice mirror cracked and his calves and stomach twitched involuntarily. Is this the terrifying physical invulnerability expert of the extreme Hada sect? While Lu Cheng was thinking, the divine enchanter of Sin Flame snorted. A dark red flame suddenly rose in the desolate area between him and the Buddhist temple. It spread with the wind and burned into the broken walls and ruins. Suddenly, the killing intent and the flame disappeared. Everything returned to the desolation of dusk. 2 minutes later, Lu Cheng and the divine enchanter of Sin Flame stepped into the Buddhist temple and stood opposite Mukko Yamashita. Without any communication, the divine enchanter of Sin Flame took out a painting with the word "swordsman" engraved on it. It was full of charm and had been passed down for a long time. It was obvious that it was the work of a physical invulnerability expert. The old man with the bamboo hat also took out a copy of the word "jia." The word "jia" was thick and looked like it was expanding. Just by looking at it from afar, Lu Cheng could confirm that it was the real "jia" formula. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame turned his head to look at him. After getting an affirmative answer, he and the old man with the bamboo hat threw out their items at the same time. They caught what they got and completed the exchange. Immediately after, they took a step back and changed their identities to that of referees. Mukko Yamashita put on his headphones and took a step forward. His body made explosive sounds. Instead of expanding his muscles, he restrained them a little. He looked at Lu Cheng with his deep and cold eyes. Following the voice of the translator, he laughed in a strange and difficult Chinese language. Ever since I was defeated by you when you were weak, I have suffered great humiliation and pain. Because of this, I couldn't sleep every night. I felt like there was a flame burning my heart and tormenting my soul. However, it was this kind of torture that allowed me to find the most fundamental strength of my heart and soul. I understood the deeper meaning of the 7 sins Hadouken and grasped the true essence of killing intent. I want to thank you and defeat you even more. As soon as Mukko Yamashita finished his sentence, his eyes turned crimson red. A thick blood-colored fog rose from the surface of his body, awakening the undercurrent hidden in the surrounding desolation. Balls of ghostly green phosphorescence floated in the air. An exaggerated sense of bloodlust surged, almost creating a mirage-like effect. At this moment, Lu Cheng felt like he was in an ancient battlefield. He saw warriors being split into two, generals being beheaded and daimyos being pierced by spears. When they turned around, their faces were exactly the same as his own. The intense pain and fear of death instantly materialized and added to Lu Cheng's soul. It shook the ice mirror and set off waves. Mukko Yamashita's mental pressure wasn't like the secret arts that only had a one-hit effect. It blended perfectly with the environment, continuous and influencing at all times. Using the geographical advantage and unknown arrangements, he actually had some physical invulnerability aura. Do you feel it? This is the beautiful killing intent. Muko Yamashita said with his eyes half closed. As soon as he finished his sentence, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and stared at Lu Cheng. He pulled off his headphones and threw them to the side along with the phone. He said in a deep voice, "I've said it before. I will defeat you with my own hands and wash away the humiliation." A ray of sunset light shone in, illuminating the temple hall behind him. It wasn't worshipping Buddha, but a blood-red Asura with 3 heads and 6 arms. P.S. Please recommend me. Chapter 519. Begin. The moment the sunset shone into the temple, 2 voices sounded at the same time. One in Chinese, the other in Japanese. With a bang, Muko Yamashita's burly and muscular body was magnified in Lu Cheng's eyes. That pair of sharp broken eyebrows were clearly visible. There was still a remnant of his figure at the entrance of the Buddhist hall that he was originally standing at. Along the way, the red fog dragged along. The stone slabs and messy obstacles on the ground were all split into 2. The cut was smooth and clean, as if it was made by a divine weapon. Lu Cheng's scalp went numb and his hair stood on end. He was caught off guard by the enemy's flash attack. He couldn't dodge or retreat, nor did he have the time to use a simplified version of physical invulnerability or force concentration to block it. According to the videos he watched, even the experienced inhuman mighty one of the extreme Hadu sect wasn't at this level. Was it because of the uniqueness of his killing intent, or was it because of the environment? In the blink of an eye, the ice mirror rippled slightly. Lu Cheng, who was resisting the invasion of fear, took control of his body and circulated his qi and blood to stimulate a few special parts, skipping the rest of the process. Simplified encountering gods in the void, fighting formula. Crack. He suddenly grew taller, and the cracks under his feet were like an earth dragon, spreading rapidly in all directions. At the same time, he shook his shoulders, and the muscles on his arms protruded with dark green veins. With a bang, he swung his elbow upwards, barely blocking Muko Yamashita's forearm, hammering with the momentum of flash. In that instant, the surrounding wind seemed to have stopped. The moving sunset seemed to have solidified. Even the desolation, pain, and killing intent dimmed. Only a pair of small fists with bulging muscles became the core of heaven and earth. One was greenish-black, the other was crimson. Both were slightly deformed, and the feeling of power and destruction was overwhelming. Boom! The pure collision of flesh created a sound like a bomb exploding. Lu Cheng's arm rebounded and his body leaned back. He took 3 steps back, each step leaving a clear mark. Even though he had used a simplified version of the fighting formula, he was still at a disadvantage against his enemy's flash strike. He couldn't neutralize that terrifying force. Muko Yamashita swayed on the spot. He wasn't in a hurry to follow up with a combo attack. Instead, he quickly turned the red mist into red light. Wrapped in a thick murderous aura, he threw a punch forward, dragging a terrifying, giant scythe behind him as he ruthlessly slashed at his opponent. As the scarlet light spread, a sinister wind swirled behind Lu Cheng, twisting into a headless black figure clad in chainmail and wielding sabers in both hands. It was blurry and unreal. With its head hanging on its chest, it raised its tachi above its head and made a slash facing the wind, forming a pincer attack with Muko Yamashita. All of this was silent and breathless. It was as if there was a chill hidden in the north wind that even the dance stage expert's absolute reaction couldn't detect. Who would have thought that Muko Yamashita, who used the 7 Sins Hadouken, would be able to summon a helper? Lu Cheng's senses were sensitive. His ice mirror reflected his surroundings and only saw the buzzing behind him. There was an abnormality in the magnetic field. He immediately raised his guard and redirected his qi and blood to his lower abdomen, stopping his retreat in time. He sat firmly on the golden chariot, grasping the distance perfectly. After a short moment, his dance stage erupted. His legs swelled and he took advantage of the momentum to jump half a step forward. Lowering his waist and abdomen, he swung his left fist. Wearing the heavy Emperor Yen glove, he struck the blood-colored scythe head-on. Boom! Clouds of crimson mist splattered, all ignited by flames. It was a spectacular sight to see a rain of fire, devouring and eliminating the sinister and evil aura nearby. The Tachi of the headless general behind Lu Cheng was only a few grains away from hitting his opponent. It was so stimulating that Lu Cheng's back broke out in goosebumps. The blurry black shadow, Helper, seemed to be imprisoned on the spot and couldn't move forward. The strike missed and dissipated indifferently. At this moment, Muko Yamashita's body swayed again. A small portion of the crimson light was ignited by the explosion. Apart from Lu Cheng's fist and right arm, the area around his skin was filled with a bloody mist. It was corroding his pores, cold and gloomy, trying to enter and absorb his chi and blood. Just as he was about to activate Emperor Yen force to disperse the bloody mist of murderous intent, Muko Yamashita had already squatted sideways. Lowering his shoulders, he raised his left fist and rushed towards the sky like a burning rocket, fast and urgent. Lu Cheng straightened his back and leaned back slightly in an instant. He felt the strong wind from his opponent's fist brushing past his face, stinging like a knife. Following which, like a spring, he straightened his back and returned to his original position. Taking advantage of the momentum, he punched towards Muko Yamashita's waist, not giving his opponent a chance to change his moves. At this critical juncture, Muko Yamashita's eyes were bloodshot and cold as usual. Following the upward rush of the fist, he jumped up, swayed his waist and bent his knee to the side. With a bang, he blocked Lu Cheng's crushing punch. Using the momentum, he spun around and swept his leg horizontally, creating a blood-red tornado. One kick after another, going back and forth continuously, with endless ferocity. Bam, bam, bam. Lu Cheng's ice mirror reflected. Raising both arms, he kept blocking in front of him. Amidst the crisp sounds of his joints being pulled back, he defended steadily and retreated in an orderly manner. However, during this process, he was slightly alarmed to feel that his body's functions seemed to be eroded by the bloody mist of murderous intent. It started to deteriorate slowly, but he couldn't free his hands to perform force concentration to dispel the effects. Muko Yamashita's murderous version of Seven Sins Hadouken blended perfectly with the special environment. If this goes on, I'll be in danger today. Lu Cheng suddenly realized. He tried to interrupt his opponent's rhythm and find a chance to catch his breath. However, Muko Yamashita, who had fallen into the murderous intent, connected his moves tightly. His attack power was terrifying. He was as crazy as an evil spirit, as bloodthirsty as an Asura. When the blood whirlwind was about to end, he immediately swung his arms and threw out a ball of crimson red, playing a remote duel with Lu Cheng. You're a Hadouken, I'm a fireball. You're a blood ball, I'm a ray of cold light. Compared to August, Muko Yamashita's Hadouken was already at his fingertips. He could perform it as he wished as long as his posture wasn't awkward. After catching his breath, he once again overlapped with the three-headed, six-armed, crimson Asura statue in the temple hall behind him. Once again, he left behind a trail of afterimages and crimson fog, flash appeared near Lu Cheng. He repeated the process from before, as if he wanted to use this crazy attack and the corrosive effect of the blood fog of murderous intent to completely defeat his opponent. His pair of dark red eyes were filled with a cold and satisfying murderous intent. He looked at his opponent who was struggling to hold on as if he was looking at a dish on a plate, waiting to be cut up and put into his mouth. In less than 2 rounds, the decline in Lu Cheng's bodily functions had started to become apparent. Without hesitation, he made a prompt decision to circulate his chi and blood to stimulate his body. Bam! Lu Cheng seemed to have returned to his peak in an instant. His muscles stretched his trousers and expanded his clothes. His fist, which had slowed down by half a beat, exploded with terrifying speed. Like a shooting arrow, it arrived first even though it was launched later. It blocked his opponent's fist, which was covered in crimson light, in front of his lower abdomen. Boom! The sound of the collision of strength and explosion destroyed the desolation around the temple. Muko Yamashita, whose murderous intent had reached its peak, and Lu Qing shook at the same time. They were evenly matched, and the latter was no longer in his passive state. Is it time to go all out? Joy flashed in Muko Yamashita's eyes. The crimson light around his body grew brighter and thicker. He took a step forward and used his right palm as a knife, chopping down diagonally. It was as if there was the accompaniment of thunder. Lu Cheng's will was like a raging fire, and his heart was like an ice mirror. He calmly circulated his qi and blood once again, stimulating the corresponding parts of his body. He saw that they were slightly injured, and a small amount of blood was oozing out. Simplified, fighting, formula, double explosion. Seeing God in the void, suppressing others with higher realms. Bam! His left fist shot out like lightning, and like a cannonball, it pierced through the air barrier and blasted towards the palm knife. His entire arm was thicker than before, as if it came from a giant. Amidst the muffled sound, the crimson light scattered. Muko Yamashita quickly retracted his palm, and his body swayed backward. Lu Qing, on the other hand, remained steady. He controlled his body to repair the internal damage, and at the same time, circulated his qi and blood to stimulate the corresponding parts. He showed no mercy. Bam! 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 Lu Qing was like a god, coldly observing the minute details of his body. He constantly stimulated the hidden parts of his body without reaching the limit, causing the damage that he could bear to a certain extent. Once, twice, thrice. His arms swung continuously, and his fists bombarded continuously, one from the left, one from the right. Every move was heavy and could split mountains. He beat Muko Yamashita until he was in a weakened state. The crimson light scattered, and his arms were trembling. He didn't expect his opponent's explosive secret technique to last so long. Boom! A few of the capillaries in Lu Cheng's eyes were broken, and his vision was filled with crimson. He turned his waist, twisted his knees, and swung his right arm fiercely. He forcefully pulled out an explosion from Muko Yamashita's blocking fist, and sent his opponent retreating. Since the start of the battle, this was the first time he had turned the tables. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qing lowered his waist, and circulated his qi and blood, reducing the negative effects caused by the explosion of the fighting formula. He stopped his body from collapsing. Even so, if he were to stimulate his qi and blood like before 2 more times, he wouldn't be able to bear it. Bam! His Dan qi gushed out. Lu Qing was like an eagle, and pounced in front of Muko Yamashita. He raised his arm, and punched downwards. Flames were ignited, and the crimson light was ignited, exploding in the silent abandoned Buddhist temple. Muko Yamashita let out a low roar, condensed the crimson light, and punched without backing down. Bam! Loud noises were heard, and the dark clouds shook. Lu Qing quickly and naturally connected the explosion of the Dan stage. One punch was heavy, and the other was explosive. They were both Emperor Yen to restrain the evil. Double explosion, triple explosion, quadruple explosion. 10th explosion, 20th explosion, 30th explosion. Lu Cheng's face was calm, like a robot from the next century. He followed up with precise footsteps, and spread his arms. Each punch was heavier than the previous one, and each kick was fiercer than the previous one. He caused flames to rise continuously in the desolate wilderness, and smoke to rise. Muko Yamashita kept retreating, crushing the stone slabs and breaking the broken walls. This caused the Buddhist temple to shake continuously, and dust to fall. It looked like it was about to collapse. During this process, he clearly felt that Muko Yamashita's body was weaker than before. In other words, the breakthrough of the enemy's murderous intent and the bearing of the home ground environment had created negative effects in other parts of his body, causing him to be stronger in offense than defense. He could only attack crazily, and once he fell into a passive position, the problem would be exposed. Bam! Lu Cheng turned sideways and punched, repelling the enemy and creating an expanding fireball. Muko Yamashita retreated backwards, and unavoidably crashed into the Asura statue in the Buddhist temple. The statue fell to the ground, and its limbs were broken. At this moment, Muko Yamashita suddenly paused, looked up at the sky, and let out a roar full of murderous intent. He ignored Lu Cheng's bombardment punch that was approaching him. The surrounding light suddenly dimmed. P.S. Today's writing speed has hit a new low. Only 3,000 words in 4 hours. Normally, it would be 6,000 words. The plot has been thought out long ago. I'll update what I've written first, and try to get the second update before 11 p.m. I'll continue writing after I finish my meal. Chapter 520. Following that furious roar filled with murderous intent, the pain and fear that had been affecting and suppressing Lu Cheng's ice mirror suddenly rolled in and dissipated. The surrounding light dimmed eerily, as though dark clouds had risen from the ground. Gusts of chilly wind blew. The wind howled and condensed, pouring into Muko Yamashita's body in an instant. An exaggerated repulsive force expanded outwards, forming an invisible barrier. Boom! Lu Cheng's punch landed. Red and white flames rolled out, dispersing the invisible force field. However, this was only half done. The further his fist moved, the slower its speed became. It was as though he had fallen into an invisible swamp. In the end, he couldn't move an inch, suspending half a foot in front of his opponent's abdomen. Everything seemed to have frozen. Once the force field was retracted, the magnetic field behind Muko Yamashita distorted, revealing a blurry black shadow that was holding a blade with both hands and hanging in front of its chest. Its body was burning with blood-red fog. It took a step forward and truly overlapped with Muko Yamashita, no longer distinguishable. The dark and gloomy Buddhist temple and the desolate wilderness suddenly brightened up, bearing the fiery glow of the sunset. Some parts were flowing with gold, while others were dazzling red. The red glow didn't just come from the horizon, it also came from Muko Yamashita. He was like a general soaked in blood, locking his gaze on Lu Cheng. At this moment, Lu Cheng suddenly felt a sense of danger. It was as if he was facing an existence that could seriously injure him. From the electric current in his tailbone caused by the absolute reaction, to the clear and accurate reflection and judgment of the ice mirror, to his supernatural ability to foresee the future in a short period of time, all of them were clamoring for him to dodge quickly and avoid the sharp edge. He didn't want to face the terrifying attack head-on, so that his body wouldn't be damaged. Muko Yamashita's attack that was about to explode was definitely stronger than the Shurkill 7 Sins Hadouken. It was a killer move that he had to use a special environment and preemptive preparation to complete. And it could only be used once. Lu Cheng's body jerked instinctively. His muscles and fascia were accumulating strength, ready to spring out. This allowed him to leap 10 to 20 meters, causing his opponent's ultimate attack to miss and truly turn the tables. But at this time, a few incoherent thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. This should be the extreme Hada sect, which was similar to the Shura kill of the physical invulnerability experts. After the attack was launched, the speed would increase, and the power would increase with the accumulation of kinetic energy until it exceeded the effective range. With Muko Yamashita's current level, even if he had a breakthrough in his wave of killing intent, even if he had other support, he wouldn't be able to unleash the full potential of this move. He had just taken 30 blows of Emperor Yen force combined with the eruption of his Dan Qi. Even if his killing intent could eliminate, neutralize, and defend against most of the explosive impact, the accumulated injuries would not be light. His body's endurance had decreased. His offense was strong, but his defense was weak. If I were to fall back into the previous situation, I wouldn't be able to use the encountering gods in the void, self-reflection to consecutively unleash the simplified fighting formula to turn the tables. At that time, his bodily functions would be eroded by the killing intent, and the outcome would be irreversible. In a split second, Lu Cheng didn't think too much about it. He didn't hesitate and made a decision in an instant. He trusted his own knowledge, vision, and experience. He didn't blindly follow absolute reaction, ice mirror, and supernatural ability. Bam! He suddenly pushed his feet inward, shaking the foundation of the Buddhist hall a little. In his mind, he had already visualized the heavy, scorching Emperor Yen with a simple crown. The fire force in his body accumulated layer by layer, continuously compressing and condensing into a small ball, blazing white and returning to blue. As the fire force that had undergone mutation at the inhuman stage was heavier, purer, and more condensed, the process was relatively fast and didn't take much effort. Following which, the god of fire, Zhurong, who had the head of a beast and the body of a human, stepped through the void, controlling the highly condensed ball of fire and preventing it from exploding. The red fog around Mukko Yamashita, as thick as blood, emitted a bright red light, enveloping him completely. As his fist charged forward, it slashed out with a swoosh. It was like a giant scythe from the sea of blood, hell, or the Grim Reaper. Compared to the seven sins had of fist, this strike was much sharper and filled with murderous intent, as though it could cut everything in its path into two. Seven sins had of fist's killing intent, Azura kill. As soon as the bloody light appeared, Lu Qing completed the seemingly complicated but smooth movements of twisting his ankles, twisting his knees, twisting his hips, wrapping his waist, and other movements. He swung his arms, holding a faint blazing white light in his hands. His fist fell from the sky, heavy, strong, and ferocious. Emperor Yen Force, Internal Explosion Fist. Boom! Before the bloody light could accelerate, it was hit by Lu Cheng's fist. Force was injected into it, producing an exaggerated deafening sound. If it wasn't for the cold winter, a flock of frightened crows would have leaped from the roof of the abandoned Buddhist temple. Animals within a certain range of the desolate wilderness would have fled in panic. Boom! Explosions sounded continuously and the bloody light shone brightly. Lu Qing felt a chill seeping into his body. His muscles stiffened, and he was thrown out by the force like a violent storm. He heard many tiny parts of his body shattering and saw multiple internal injuries. The power of one blow was shocking. His consciousness looked down from above, like a deity looking at his body. Lu Qing controlled the details and controlled his injuries while avoiding them. He switched to a way of exerting force with the least negative effect. He adjusted his center of gravity, bounced in mid-air, and landed steadily. Other than his face being slightly paler than before, his shoes and clothes torn, he didn't show any signs of injury. Mukko Yamashita, at the entrance of the Buddhist temple, was trembling slightly. There was even some blood seeping out from the corners of his mouth, eyes, and nose. His accumulated injuries were completely triggered by the internal explosion. Lu Qing believed that his injuries were more serious than his. However, due to their different levels of control over their bodies, it looked like the difference between heaven and earth. At this moment, his eyelids twitched. Mukko Yamashita's figure was reflected in his pupils. He raised his hands and was about to form a seal. Wholeness formula. He had to recover his stamina and spirit, suppress his injuries, and seek the final victory. Lu Qing focused his mind and circulated his qi and blood. Relying on his precise control over his body, he simplified the process of the army formula. He didn't use any seals, but only released his aura. He shouted the ancient sound before Mukko Yamashita finished. Army. The temple suddenly darkened. The murderous aura of the army from the ancient battlefield was triggered. In an instant, it turned into shadows and pounced on Mukko Yamashita along with Lu Cheng's spirit. Previously on the plain, when he predicted that they might encounter an ancient battlefield, he had already considered whether the power, effect, and distance of the army formula would be enhanced as a result. The answer was yes. At this moment, Mukko Yamashita's body turned cold. He felt that his limbs and head were entangled by the army spirit that had died tragically. He couldn't break free. He saw Itachi slashing horizontally, about to land on his neck. The scene of his head flying up and blood spurting out was playing out. No! He cried out in fear. The preparation of the wholeness formula was in vain. At this moment, Lu Qing had already gathered his qi and blood, spirit, and force in his lower abdomen, using this to dispel and suppress most of the negative effects. Then, when his Dan Qi exploded, he planned the path of exertion that would have the least impact on his injuries. With a push of his legs, he pounced in front of Mukko Yamashita. He swung his left fist sideways, bringing along blazing flames that were close to white. He delivered a ferocious swing punch. This was the boxing technique of the Jiruga sect. Using it here would put the least burden on the body and was also the most suitable for the situation. Bam! Mukko Yamashita pulled his arm and raised it to parry in time. However, his body was blown up by the explosion of Emperor Yen force. The blood mist became thinner, and the spreading flames seemed to stick to the red glow on the surface of his body, absorbing nutrients and burning continuously. Lu Cheng's eyes were clear and sparkling, as though there were two mirrors made of ice, reflecting his opponent completely without any emotion. Bam! He gathered his qi and blood and swung his right fist again. The flames were heavy, and it was a half-step punch. When Mukko Yamashita managed to parry, he took a step forward, bent his right elbow, and smashed it down ferociously. Bam, 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 bam. After a series of moves, Lu Qing suddenly turned forward and swung his left arm backward. Like a burning steel whip, he whipped it viciously between Mukko Yamashita's raised arms, causing his shoulders to tremble and he staggered backwards. With a sliding step, Lu Cheng's right fist rushed forward. It was so fast that it looked like it was about to fly, leaving his opponent with no choice but to parry in haste. This time, there was no explosion, no burning. A cold, chilling sensation invaded Mukko Yamashita's body, causing him to shiver. Much of his boiling murderous intent and bloodlust faded away, and his mind became clear. Once the extreme emotions of his opponent weakened, Lu Qing immediately spread his arms apart and started attacking from both sides. Bam, 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 bam. The friction created red flames, causing Mukko Yamashita to be completely flustered. After fighting for a while, his storm-like combination of punches suddenly stopped. He turned his waist and back quickly, and whipped his leg horizontally. Bam! His leg landed on Mukko Yamashita's palms, which he could only block hastily, and bounced them back, crashing into his body. Bam! Mukko Yamashita was sent flying, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body. He spat out a mouthful of uncontrollable blood, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Lu Qing straightened his back and was about to pounce again, but the skinny old man wearing the bamboo hat had somehow blocked in front of Mukko Yamashita, announcing the end of the match. The winner was self-evident. Lu Qing won. Mukko Yamashita fell to the ground. He saw Lu Qing, who was a few steps away, calmly saluting him with his usual expression. He turned around, as if he wasn't affected by the battle, and slowly walked away barefooted. This scene made Mukko Yamashita's heart sink deeper and deeper. He could no longer see the light of day, and no hope. I used everything I had and borrowed external strength, but I was still no match for him. And he seemed to be having it easy. Leaving the Buddhist temple, Lu Qing walked for a while in the desolate wilderness. After confirming that his figure was no longer within the range of Mukko Yamashita and the old man wearing the bamboo hat, he let out a sigh of relief and slowed down his precise control of his body. After relaxing, his footsteps suddenly became weak, and he almost fell. "Senior, please pass me my phone." Lu Qing blushed, and looked at the divine enchanter of Sin Flame who was walking silently beside him. "P.S. Please recommend me." Chapter 521. Inherited from the same lineage. The divine enchanter of Sin Flame finally spoke, giving a brief evaluation of Lu Cheng's previous performance. Lu Qing could only reply with a dry laugh. He silently took the phone and sent a message to Yenjika. "Done. Just as we expected, it's really an ancient battlefield. I'll be able to teach you the wholeness formula in the new year. In Connecticut, America, the night was dark and silent. Yenjika's room suddenly rang with an exaggerated message notification. She opened her eyes in a daze and picked up the phone. Faint dimples immediately appeared on her cheeks. She forced herself to reply with a blushing and smiling emoji and adjusted the settings so as not to disturb her rest. After doing all this, she fell down and turned around. Hugging a small part of the quilt, she fell asleep sweetly. The corners of her mouth seemed to be curled up, as if she was having a pleasant dream. Lu Qing smiled when he saw the reply. He put away his phone, grabbed his backpack, and found a pair of casual running shoes. He picked up a woolen shirt and put them on slowly. Other than his trousers, which were a little torn, there was no trace of a battle on his body. In public, with a senior expert around, he still had some sense of shame and didn't take off his pants on the spot. He could still wear them anyway. Putting on a down jacket and carrying his backpack, Lu Qing controlled the healing of his internal injuries and slowly walked forward using only his legs. Just then, the divine enchanter of Sin Flame passed the rubbing of the wholeness formula to him and said in a hoarse voice, "Return it to me when you return to China." According to the boastful words of Shi Jiangwo, his disciple could master any of the 9 words formulas in minutes and leave him far behind. Sure. Lu Qing didn't find it difficult and accepted the rubbing without hesitation. Along the way, he didn't cultivate directly because he couldn't be distracted. He only carefully observed the ancient shape of the wholeness formula and the essence it contained to get a feel for it. After checking into the hotel that night, he finally had some free time. He sat cross-legged on the bed and placed the rubbings in front of him. He closed his eyes and sketched out the ancient characters while chanting. It was similar to the process of cultivating the 9 words formula in the past. His Jindan was triggered, leading to vibrations and ripples. It was resplendent and took shape, engraving the charm of the wholeness formula into his mind. But this time, it didn't change. Only the corresponding fragment appeared as usual. Jia. Lu Cheng's deep voice reverberated in the room. It seemed to contain a sense of lofty mystery. He was changing his hand seals to test the internal training effects of the wholeness formula. After a while, he opened his eyes and nodded slightly. He already had a grasp of the situation. The normal use of the wholeness formula stimulated the corresponding parts of the body, causing the secretion of hormones, invigorating the mind and rejuvenating the body. It was similar to stabbing the thigh with a knife, using the excruciating pain in exchange for the activation of the body's protective mechanism. It cleared the mind instantly and filled the body with strength. Of course, compared to the crude method of stabbing the thigh, it was more technical. The stimulation was more targeted, and the effects were better and more obvious. It lived up to its name as a secret art. I can only use it once a day. Even with the simplified version of self-reflection, I can only use it 3 times at most. And if I reach the limit, I'll feel weak and won't be able to get good feedback for a long time. The mental and physical strength I recover with the wholeness formula will decrease more easily than usual. Lu Qing seriously pondered the characteristics of the secret art. When used for internal training, it'll shake the body and indirectly affect the brain. It'll allow the body to recover faster and faster as time goes by. The effects of deep sleep will also improve. In other words, I'll need 6 to 7 hours of rest before I fully master the wholeness formula. 4 hours will be enough, or even less. Lu Qing couldn't help but feel disappointed at the thought. Just a few years ago, his favorite leisure activity was still sleeping in. Everyone said that it was a waste to sleep in during the holidays. He had always thought that it was a waste not to sleep in during the holidays. But after he started practicing martial arts, he bid farewell to sleeping in. He no longer enjoyed it. Now, it seemed that his afternoon naps could be shortened to half an hour, and his sleep time at night could be reduced by a third or even more. Sigh, this is good too. I feel like I'm living longer than others and can do more things. Lu Cheng's thoughts wandered. For some reason, he suddenly thought of Ku's shameful and angry scolding. Hooligan. He coughed lightly and stopped his thoughts. With a smile, he picked up his phone and shared the effects and characteristics of the wholeness formula with Yenjika. In the end, he said righteously, "This way, you can learn more easily." "Yes, yes." Yenjika nodded happily. The next morning, after training, Lu Qing met up with the divine enchanter of Sin Flame and handed him the rubbing. "Senior, I'm done." The divine enchanter of Sin Flame looked at him for a full 5 seconds before reaching out and taking the rubbing. Lu Qing handed over the task and felt relieved. He was more hopeful about the future. In a little over a year, he had collected 6 words of the 9 words formula, which was 2/3 complete. There were still a few years to go before Master's old injuries completely relapsed and his body collapsed. There was still a lot of hope. Bah, why am I thinking about the good instead of the bad? Maybe I don't need to collect all the 9 words formulas and Master's old injuries will be healed because of the advancement of technology and martial arts. Judging from the situation of the Jin Dan, one of the remaining 9 words formulas should be used for healing. They didn't talk on the way. In the afternoon, they arrived at Haidong Airport and went their separate ways. Lu Qing didn't rush home. Instead, he took the high-speed rail to Wuyuemozhang. He planned to pay his respects to Master and burn incense at the sect. He wouldn't come back on the first day of the new year. In Shi Yuejian's villa, Geezer Shi held an exquisite wine pot engraved with the word, fighting. He looked at his disciple and clicked his tongue. That old geezer Sin Flame said you have a solid foundation and a lot of experience. Senior, you flatter me, Lu Qing said humbly. That old geezer doesn't usually praise people. Geezer Shi waved his hand, happy that his reputation had increased. To be able to defeat an opponent of the same level who had comprehended the killing intent in an environment set up by the opponent in advance, you didn't disgrace this old man. He paused for a moment and said, your ice mirror has reached the level of encountering gods in the void, self-reflection. If you want to go further in the inhuman stage, it's almost impossible. How about this, tomorrow when we go to the sect, I'll give you 3 days to study the physical invulnerability chapters of the ice sect. How much you can comprehend will depend on yourself. Study the physical invulnerability chapters of the ice sect? Lu Qing was shocked at first, but then he was overjoyed. Before attaining the external connection with heaven and earth, it was impossible to master the 9 unique arts. However, it was still possible to comprehend something from them and draw parallels. Didn't Peng Liyun imitate and create 2 martial arts by referencing 9 Heavens Ensemble and Thunder from a Clear Sky, Cloudless Thunderblade? Although they weren't simplified physical invulnerability, they were still quite extraordinary. Moreover, they were faster and more suitable for the user. In Peng Liyun's hands, they weren't much worse than Thunder Seal or Fiery Thunderbolt. Did Master acknowledge my accumulation and experience? Thank you, Master. Lu Qing blurted out. Geezer Shi glared at him and said, why don't I see you thanking me usually? Master, I keep my gratitude in my heart. I only express 1/10 of it. Lu Qing had learned a lot from Talker, so he tried to diffuse the situation with a smile. The next morning, in the Sungtao Pavilion of the Ice God sect, Lu Qing sat on the balcony, his eyes reflecting the pine forest and green sea. However, a clear image of his body appeared in his mind. His flesh wriggled and stopped the wounds, healing them quickly one by one. After an unknown period of time, he felt that the internal injuries from the battle with Muko Yamashita were at least half healed under the effects of the pills and self-reflection. I'll be fully healed in 2 or 3 days. Lu Qing exhaled. His ears twitched as he heard deliberately light and silent footsteps approaching. He stood up slowly, withdrew his aura, and walked slowly to the door. After waiting for a dozen seconds, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lu Qing reached out and pulled open the door. Mo Jingting's curled fingers froze in midair, as though she was shocked. Hello, junior martial uncle. She quickly regained her senses. Her misty eyes, which seemed to lack focus, were filled with smiles. Sect leader martial uncle is looking for me. Lu Qing went straight to the point. Yeah, he's waiting for you at the Ice Queen Pavilion. Mo Jingting looked at the increasingly unfathomable little martial uncle and added with a smile, he wants to bring you to the restricted area of the sect to observe the unique physical invulnerability moves. Alright, sorry to trouble you. Lu Qing smiled courteously, walked out of the room, closed the door, and walked along the corridor towards the Ice Queen Pavilion. Mo Jingting followed behind, looking at his back as he lowered his head and typed on his phone. She suddenly felt a little envious and emotional. Little martial uncle is really becoming more and more like an expert, except when he's playing on his phone. Why didn't martial granduncle bring him back to the sect earlier? At the Ice Queen Pavilion, sect leader He stood near the entrance. He smiled at Lu Cheng and said, "You've really made us wrong again and again. This old man originally thought that you would only be able to observe next year. Thank you for the compliment, sect leader martial uncle." Lu Cheng bowed, a little embarrassed. Let's go. He turned around and led Lu Cheng to the basement level. As they walked, he explained, "Don't be greedy. You're still at the inhuman stage, so it's enough to focus on 2 or 3 moves when you observe. Otherwise, it'll take up too much energy and you won't be able to learn anything. You've made some progress in Ice Mirror, so the most suitable move for you is the 5th move, Enemy Heart Freezing move. Also, the 6th move, Ice Spirit Holy Light, and the 1st move, Eternal Ice Wall, are more suitable for you. According to your master, the 9th move, Vast Starry Sky, Absolute Frost, is closer to your understanding. It's a pity that this move has long been lost due to the chaos of war. Even with the alliance of several sects, they could only come up with a weakened version. I hope that one day, you'll be able to innovate and perfect it, and even surpass the past." Lu Qing listened attentively as he followed sect leader martial uncle through a long corridor and 3 thick heavy metal doors. Amidst the illusion that this place was very technologically advanced, they entered a hall that was shimmering with silvery white light. Before he could observe his surroundings, even with his strength and realm, he couldn't help but shiver. So cold. P.S. Today is the death anniversary of the Elder. I originally planned to write 3 chapters yesterday to free up some time in the afternoon. However, my typing speed wasn't ideal yesterday, so I didn't succeed. Facepalm. Chapter 522. The entire hall was covered in a cold silver color, as though it was made of special metal. Here, it was filled with whistling cold winds, falling goose feathers, and sparkling crystals. It was so cold that it was like a place of 2 extremes. Yes, in the middle of the mountain, where it was isolated from the outside world, there was a terrifying snowstorm raging, as though it wanted to bury all living things. Lu Qing subconsciously circulated his flame force to warm his body. Looking around, he realized that the source of the snowstorm came from 9 paintings hanging in different positions. They were made of special materials, like cloth or silk, and had different charms. Some were dark and cold, some were covered in snow and wind, some were crystal clear, and some were white. Together, they formed an illusory world of ice and snow. With so many objects with charms placed together, it was easy to attract and influence the outside world, forming a cycle. It was different from taking them out individually, where one could only sense them by touching them. Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully, his gaze sweeping the other places. At the corresponding positions of the 9 paintings, there was a stone platform on which different items were placed. Some were golden pages, some were crystal items, some were plain, and some were full of charm. The 9 stone platforms were like stars, surrounding a transparent cabinet in the center. Inside the cabinet was the ice essence bead, which seemed to be condensed by blue light. It was also the source of the unusual scene in this place. Different paintings correspond to different visualizations of different unique arts. The stone platforms below them have written descriptions of the practice, explanations of the moves, and the charms left behind by previous generations of physical invulnerability grandmasters. You can combine them and comprehend them. Don't blindly follow the visualizations. It's better to not have books than books. Martial arts are improved over time. He gave a brief explanation and smiled. Stay here for 3 hours every day. Don't force yourself. Don't think that you can withstand the harsh environment here just because you have Emperor Yen force. Be careful of the cold charms seeping into your bones. You may get arthritis for no reason, and it will affect your progress to physical invulnerability. Thank you for your advice, sect leader. I understand. I'll stay here from 1:30 to 4:30 every day. Lu Qing knew what was good for him and bowed sincerely. Good. Comprehension is up to you. I'll take my leave first. That's the enemy heart freezing move. The ice mirror is a simplified version of it. That's the ice spirit holy light, the ancestor of the ice burning. It comes with a set of saber and sword techniques. You can take a look and try to understand it. Even if you don't learn how to use weapons, you can still integrate it into your fists and legs. That's the Eternal Ice Wall, a purely defensive martial art. But you youngsters have a broader mind, maybe you can come up with other uses. That's the Boundless Starry Sky, one of the 2 killing moves of the Ice sect. Since the thunder, fire, battle, and plague of the 5 sects of Taoism had condensed the physical invulnerability-related techniques into 9, many of the later generations imitated and categorized them. The 1st to 7th forms were physical invulnerability techniques with different effects, while the 8th and 9th forms were the most powerful killer moves. They were named differently to differentiate them. For example, the 8th form of the Thunder sect, Thunder from a Clear Sky, Cloudless Thunder Blade, the 9th form of the Fire sect, 9 rotations of 5 flames, Descent of the Sun, the 9th form of the Fighting sect, Wrath of the Dumu, Heavenly Punishment of the Star Palace, the 8th form of the Plague sect, Demons, and Monsters, Road to the Underworld, and the 9th form of the Dark sect, Dark Devouring the Sun, Descent of the Eternal Night. The 8th and 9th forms of the Ice Spirit Holy Kung Fu, also known as the Ice Sect's secret art, were Frozen Heaven and Earth, Eternally Unchanging, and Boundless Starry Sky, Absolute Frost, respectively. After giving the instructions, he didn't waste any more of Lu Cheng's time. He slowly walked out of the place and closed the heavy door, isolating the inside from the outside world. Lu Cheng weighed the pros and cons before striding towards the location of the enemy heart-freezing move. The ice mirror had already become the core of his martial arts. It would be best if he could understand and improve upon it. The painting seemed to be carved with a mirror made of ice crystals, but if one looked closely, they would find that it seemed to be more like a transparent heart with all 7 orifices. As the cold fog around it shrank and expanded, it seemed to come alive and was beating. Lu Cheng tried to understand it directly, but to no avail. Then, he flipped through the text descriptions, diagrams, secret manuals, notes left behind by the predecessors, and the insights left behind by the ancestral masters. He went through them one by one, seriously and attentively. When he had a grasp of the overall situation and had a certain level of understanding, he walked back to the front of the visualization diagram. Once again, he entered meditation and tried to comprehend it calmly. 3 hours passed quickly. Lu Cheng woke up from the cold with his flame force circulating naturally. His body was shivering uncontrollably. It's been a long time since I had this feeling. No wonder Master only gave me 3 days. Otherwise, even if I only came here for 3 hours a day, I wouldn't be able to take it. I would have to wait for at least 10 days to half a month before I can enter this place again. Lu Cheng transformed his flame force into Emperor Yen and stopped shivering. He waited patiently for He to open the door as though nothing had happened. As for the enemy heart-freezing move, he didn't understand much due to his low realm. He only vaguely understood that not only could it be used to control one's body, but it was also the nemesis of negative emotions. It could also be used to connect with the outside world. Within a certain range, one could see the enemy's emotions and changes in their muscles. In other words, the God who looked down on him could also see his opponent. Based on this, Lu Cheng had a preliminary idea of how to train after the ice mirror. On the second day, he comprehended the ice spirit holy light. This was a unique skill that strengthened the ice spirit force. It could be released without dissipating, and it could be condensed into blades and swords. It was a set of moves and techniques. Lu Qing couldn't understand the essence of the technique, so he couldn't increase his force. However, with the support of encountering gods in the void, self-reflection, he could barely be considered a beginner. As for the bladesmanship and swordsmanship, he studied them seriously for quite some time. Combined with the notes of predecessors, he gained some insight into the simple changes. On the third day, he found a possible way to improve his ice armor from the compression and thickening of the Millennium Ice Wall. As this was a purely defensive technique, there weren't many details related to it. There was still an hour and a half before his comprehension came to an end. Since he had nothing to do, he walked to the incomplete version of the vast starry sky, absolute frost. Its background was dark, dotted with dozens of tiny, distant stars. The contrast between the two made the silence and coldness of the starry sky even more apparent. It was as though all heat no longer existed, and all civilizations had turned into tombs. Taking a closer look, Lu Qing found that there seemed to be another palm in the visualization diagram. It was a palm that encompassed the darkness and brought about eternal silence. It seemed both real and illusory, making it hard to grasp. After comprehending for a while, he still didn't gain anything. Lu Qing tried to taste it from another angle. Let's not talk about that palm for now. How do I create the absolute frost of the vast starry sky? In the vast universe, the temperature will naturally drop to a terrifying level in places far away from the stars. There's no need for other procedures. Imitating the martial arts of the stars, don't tell me I have to completely isolate the radiation of the sun or the spread of heat. Lu Qing thought aimlessly. He shivered as he activated the ice spirit force in an experimental manner. First, he used the principle of heat insulation to stack his force, leaving a gap in the outer layer to block the heat and increase the temperature of the core. However, he failed miserably. Following that, he expanded his force in an attempt to lower the temperature, but he still failed. Again and again, Lu Qing's fire could only last for less than a minute. Just like his previous attempts, he always failed. Seeing that there were still more than 10 minutes left, he gave up and stared at the visualization diagram again. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was very similar to the starry sky when he reached Dan equilibrium. It's very similar. Lu Qing thought, and a bold idea came to him. I can't feel the charm of the diagram, but I can directly imitate its state. Let's see if I can get some experience from it. Lu Qing immediately put his thoughts into action. He withdrew his qi and blood and balanced his ice and fire. The former was dark and cold, while the latter was heavy and hot. Together, they maintained the existence of the starry sky universe. For other Dan stage practitioners, they would have to expand their Dan force at this point. However, Lu Qing kept his consciousness at the top of the starry sky and controlled his fire force and qi and blood to shrink to the core, away from the darkness at the edge. This was to create a scene similar to the visualization diagram. This process was very difficult. When the contraction reached a certain level, Lu Qing, who was in the state of Dan equilibrium, didn't have enough strength to continue the operation. He repeated it over and over again, failing again and again. When he was nearing the end, he suddenly thought that he could find a helper, so he used force concentration again to shrink his fire force, qi, and blood, and spirit. Just as he was about to reach his limit, Lu Qing suddenly triggered the Jin Dan in his lower abdomen and transferred a small amount of energy. The light instantly collapsed and sank into the core, distancing itself from the darkness. This allowed the starry sky to appear in a state similar to a visualization diagram. This state was out of balance and couldn't be maintained. Lu Qing suddenly exploded his Dan force and let the warmth return to his body. He then threw a cannon punch forward, pouring out the darkness. There was no cracking sound or banging sound. In front of his fist, large pieces of light blue ice crystals silently condensed in the void where the snow was falling. It was as if the air was solidified. This strange phenomenon disappeared in a flash. Lu Cheng's whole body was sore and weak. He gasped for breath as he looked at the effect of the punch. He was a little happy. This power seems to be much stronger than the normal ice spirit force. I wonder if I can push it bit by bit without the help of the Jindan and achieve an effect of 30 to 40%. What should I call this self-created move? At this moment, the heavy metal door moved back and he walked in. Looking at Lu Cheng, who was obviously not in good condition, he shook his head and laughed. You don't have to work so hard. This place is also yours. You'll have plenty of chances to come back in the future. Sooner or later, you'll get something. I'm already getting something now. Lu Cheng muttered and replied with a smile. Sect leader Martial Uncle is right. I'll keep this a secret until I can use a weaker version without the help of the Jindan. I'll let Taoist or Renli experience it in April. P.S. It's the end of the month. Looking for recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Chapter 523. Are you going to stay in the sect for a few more days or go home directly? He asked with a smile as he walked along the corridor with his hands behind his back. Lu Cheng recalled that his senior sister had gone to Guanwei for a competition and his master had gone to a secret military base for periodic treatment. I've already booked the tickets. Okay. He walked up the stairs and into the main hall of the Ice Queen Pavilion. I'll get Jingting to send you to the airport. No need to trouble Marshal Nisamo. Any disciple will do. Lu Cheng blurted out. He always felt uneasy around that crafty superstar. What if she made use of him and created a scandal? Wouldn't that hurt Ku's feelings? She's free right now. What trouble is there to talk about? He picked up the phone and called Mo Jingting over. Lu Cheng couldn't refuse good intentions. Since what was done couldn't be undone, he didn't say anything else. He just had to keep his distance later. Also, after that concert, Mo Jingting had clearly restrained herself from doing anything that could cause misunderstandings. While waiting, he unlocked his phone and said to Yen Zhika with a big smile, I've learned something from Vast Starry Sky, Absolute Frost, today. Who knows, I might be able to create some new moves. Since it was midnight and the girl was still asleep, Lu Cheng didn't wait for a reply and added, I plan to keep this a secret for now. We'll talk about it after I actually create something. Yeah, I can use this time to talk to Master about this and get some pointers. After a while, Mo Jingting arrived at the Ice Queen Pavilion with her car keys in hand. Her tight-fitting dark blue jeans accentuated her tall figure and slender legs. She casually put on a short beige jacket, and her straight hair casually draped over her shoulders. She looked more like a girl next door than a movie star. Young Martial Uncle, aren't you going to have dinner before you leave? She looked at everyone in a daze. Lu Cheng's figure was reflected in her affectionate eyes. Lu Cheng smiled politely. I'm in a hurry. I'll eat at the airport. Young Martial Uncle, you're so eager to go home. Mo Jingting teased him, acting like they were close friends. After getting into the car and fastening his seatbelt, Lu Cheng recalled the past and explained to his wife with a snicker, Sect leader Martial Uncle asked Mo Jingting to send me to the airport. Now that I know that the rearview mirror can be controlled, I won't make any mistakes. Mo Jingting skillfully started the engine. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Lu Cheng's upturned mouth. She couldn't help but ask curiously, Young Martial Uncle, what are you laughing at? Did I drive the wrong way? Driving posture. It's easy for people to misunderstand. Damn it, it's all those old drivers' fault for using the word driving so badly. Lu Cheng thought to himself. He shook his head and laughed. I'm sharing something interesting with my leader. Oh. Mo Jingting seemed to have understood and tactfully stopped talking about this topic. After the car drove for a while, she looked ahead and suddenly said, Young Martial Uncle, do you think I have a chance of reaching the dance stage? Lu Cheng immediately felt like an elder. After thinking for a while, he replied, You're only in your 20s. There's still a long way to go before your qi and blood deteriorates. If you can settle down and bear the pain, it's not impossible. Mo Jingting had been accepted as a disciple of the Ice God sect. She had reached the level of professional ninth pin at such a young age, which showed that her talent was not bad. However, her ambition was not there, which was why she had not made any progress for a long time. After being in the entertainment circle for a few years, I realized that the dance stage is quite useful for me. Mo Jingting said with a smile, for example, I can strengthen my control over my body. My expression and acting skills can improve rapidly. The same goes for the aura of my singing. Most importantly, I can lock my qi and blood, control my skin and muscles, and slow down my aging. I'm really interested in reaching the dance stage. If I encounter any difficulties, young martial uncle, you have to help me. Your master is more senior than me, and there's also the sect master. How can I help? Lu Qing subconsciously rejected her request. Mo Jingting laughed softly and suddenly changed the topic. Senior Zhu Tai has been at the inhuman stage for a long time, but he's still stuck at professional fifth pin. He's almost 30 years old, so there's almost no hope for him to reach the physical invulnerability stage. Junior Lei Fang is almost 25 years old, but he still hasn't refined his root pulp and made a breakthrough. If this drags on for another 2 years, I feel that even if he does reach the dance stage, he won't have much spirit left. Lu Qing listened quietly to Mo Jingting talk about the situation of the people in the sect, occasionally interrupting. They arrived at the airport in Shangao in a harmonious manner. Waving goodbye, Mo Jingting watched his back as he entered the departure hall. She retracted her gaze, smiled faintly, and sighed. She picked up another phone, opened WeChat, and glanced at it. This was the number she used to test men. Back then, Lei Fang had a soft spot for this little senior sister and started a passionate pursuit. Mo Jingting was a little tempted and wanted to give it a try. However, after being in the entertainment industry for so many years, she was used to seeing the ugly faces of men. She specially got a number, found a full set of third-rate photos, and registered a new WeChat account. After adding her circle of friends, she sent a friend request to her junior brother, which was easily accepted. In the subsequent conversations, Lei Fang was even more flirtatious and vulgar, which allowed her to see a different side of her junior brother. Since then, Mo Jingting had given up on the idea and only maintained a relatively ambiguous relationship with Lei Fang, unwilling to take the next step. After hearing that Yan Zhika had gone abroad to study, she thought of how her little senior uncle would be all alone and unable to sleep. On a whim, she used this WeChat account to test him again, wanting to expose his fake serious face. However, she glanced at her phone screen again. Her repeated pleas were like stones sinking into the sea. There was no response. Mo Jingting shook her head with a smile. She pushed the lever, released the foot brake, pressed the accelerator, and turned the car onto the road. Little senior uncle seems to be a martial artist like an ascetic monk, or maybe he doesn't have a strong desire for that. At the end of January, Shushan, Xing Province. In the bright and clean new house, Qi Fang packed a pile of things. She patted her waist and said to her son, "This is for Zhika. Remember to take it with you later." Lu Qing looked at the sausages, bacon, and glutinous rice cakes in the bag. The corner of his mouth twitched and said, "Mom, I'm afraid this won't pass the test." "Why not? You can set fire and explode, but you can still pass the test, right? How can they be better than you?" Qi Fang glared at him and retorted loudly. "Mom, you make so much sense that I can't refute." Lu Qing laughed and sighed. It took him a Herculean effort to persuade the stubborn middle-aged woman. Before leaving, Qi Fang said earnestly, "You have to treat Zhika well. She's a young girl, but she left her hometown for you. She can't even go home for Chinese New Year. She's all alone." On this matter, Lu Qing was suspected to be showing off his eloquence and embellishing the original story, so he didn't dare to say much. He nodded hurriedly and then changed the topic until he was chased out of the house by his impatient mother. Humming a melody silently, he happily got into the car and started to imagine his trip to America. Chinese New Year, my birthday, Valentine's Day, and our date anniversary. I wonder what kind of gift or surprise Shika will give me. Anyway, I'm already prepared. This time, I can give Aunt Du a holiday and let her come back to spend Chinese New Year with her son. I'll be her full-time bodyguard. Hee hee, does this count as the school bell's bodyguard? When the weekend comes, if I have the chance, I'll try to challenge the mighty ones of the Jaruga sect. I'll slowly familiarize myself with what I've learned and warm up for the national competition in April. I'll ask Spider to keep an eye on the Holy Top Church. If that scumbag Pavel dares to come out and commit a crime, I'll make sure he'll never be able to do anything bad again. His good mood was met with a not-so-good flight delay. Lu Qing arrived in Connecticut 5 hours later than expected. It was already 10 at night. The cold wind was howling and the snow was falling. Didn't I ask you to wait for me at home? I'm not a kid. I can find a car myself. Lu Qing replied to Yan Zhika on his phone as he walked out of the gate. It's late and cold. You still have class tomorrow. Yan Zhika replied with an emoji of lowering its head and smiling shyly. But I want to see my Qing first. Lu Qing was taken aback at first, but soon broke into a smile. Stunned expression, wait. What did I see just now? My little fairy said something mushy to me. It's all because of you. Yan Zhika replied with grief and anger. After reading the message, Lu Qing didn't even have time to type when a white figure entered his eyes. The girl was wearing a long white down jacket and a light-colored knitted cap. Fluffy balls dangled from both sides of the cap to protect her ears. She was beautiful and cute. Their eyes met and looked at each other. Nothing needed to be said. In the office of the Department of Homeland Security, Smith thought he was finally free after not seeing a certain troublemaker for nearly 2 months. He started to learn Chinese with great interest. He stared blankly at the monitor screen and spat out 3 unfamiliar and strange syllables. Matharf *Ker, P.S. There are only 2 days left at the end of the month. Remember to vote or it'll be a waste if you don't. Chapter 524. Lu. As Smith often called him that, Lu Qing already had a reaction to it. However, when he looked in the direction of the voice, all he saw were 2 unfamiliar Caucasian students. Sensing his gaze, George and Wilton got even more agitated. They blurted out a series of words and slang. Not only were they as fast as a machine gun, but they also interfered with each other. Lu Qing, whose hearing was barely good enough, was confused. He could only vaguely make out the familiar words, King of Youth League. However, the professional security guard, who had put some distance between them, understood most of it. That Asian boy is in the top 4 of the King of Youth League. He's the idol of those 2 students. I wonder what competition it is. Looks like they're hardcore fans of Chinese culture. They're crazy about martial arts, which is more mysterious than martial arts. The security guard gave his evaluation and thought highly of Lu Qing. He took out his encrypted phone and started contacting the headquarters. As a professional bodyguard, when an unknown person with a certain level of strength appeared around his employer, he had to carefully investigate the background of the person, prepare a plan, and guard against accidents. Participated in the King of Youth League. They call him Lu. He described Lu Cheng's surname with a similar pronunciation. Please reply as soon as possible. After sending the message, he held his phone in his hand and waited for a reply. He looked at Lu Qing warily and observed his interaction with the students. Just then, his phone buzzed and vibrated wildly. It almost broke free from its restraints and escaped. The senior security guard picked it up and looked at it, only to see one shocking blood-red word after another on the screen, very dangerous. Do not approach. Avoid him. Stay away from him. Oh my God. The senior security guard froze for a few seconds and subconsciously put some distance between them. When his brain finally understood the situation, he suppressed his fear and rushed into the classroom with his head down. He grabbed his employer and whispered, "Go. Go. Go. Go." Regardless of whether the other party had any ill intentions, leaving first was definitely the right thing to do. Lu Qing didn't notice this little interlude. After Yenjika's translation, he roughly understood that he had met two true fans. He returned their greetings with a smile. Wilton, the freckled, brown-haired youth, praised him excitedly. At the end of it, he nervously extended an invitation. "Are you free these days? Can you come visit our martial arts hobby club? It would be even better if you could tell us more about the mysteries of Chinese martial arts." George scolded his companion under his breath, feeling that he was too nervous to speak clearly, so he quickly added, "There's a martial arts club in Connecticut University, and we're one of the members. Everyone is very interested in Chinese martial arts, and we hope to get a more detailed introduction from you." Holding Yenjika's hand, Lu Qing heard the girl's eager reaction when she heard the words, "Martial Arts Hobby Club." He understood. Tilting his head, he chuckled and asked, "Do you want to stretch your limbs?" Ever since she came to the United States in August, other than her daily training and her occasional guidance, Ke had not enjoyed a battle for a long time. For a martial artist who liked to participate in such activities, this was not something to be happy about. With her husband by her side, she didn't need to think about anything else. Yenjika thought for a while and nodded, reluctantly, with her eyes shining. "Then let's go take a look in the afternoon. There are no classes anyway." "All right." Lu Qing turned to George and Wilton and smiled warmly. "How about this afternoon? We'll be there around 2. "All right. No problem. No problem at all." The blonde youth, George, almost slid to his knees in celebration. After getting the address, Lu Qing waved to the two foreign fans and walked out of the campus hand in hand with Yenjika. "Aya." As they walked, the girls suddenly stopped and blurted out in frustration, "I didn't bring my martial arts suit and shoes, how are you going to stretch your limbs?" "Cool, you don't look like you're reluctant at all." Lu Qing laughed inwardly and said calmly, "Why do you think I said we'll be there at 2? Isn't it just to give us time to drive home and get our things?" Yenjika turned her head in surprise and stared at Lu Qing with her eyes wide open for more than 10 seconds. Then she broke into a smile and gave him a thumbs up. 5-star rating. "I didn't even get it, what should I do? I feel like Cheng has surpassed me in terms of intelligence, poo poo poo. No way. It must be because I'm sleepy." Thinking of this, she quickly changed the topic. "Then what are we having for lunch?" Before Yenjika could finish, she remembered something. She took out her phone, unlocked the screen, lowered her head and started typing. Lu Qing did the same. After a while, the girl waved her phone and suggested a little proudly, "Let's have this one. It's in a commercial building nearby. It's a seafood restaurant in Connecticut that has been operating for decades. This is a guide I made in my spare time from studying." Looking at the address, route and name of the restaurant on the girl's screen, Lu Qing suddenly laughed and raised his phone to show her the screen. The same picture and the same words. "What a coincidence. I made a guide too," he said with a smile. Yenjika focused her eyes and smiled like a flower. The tacit understanding grew, and the two of them swung their hands together, following the route given by the map. They slowly walked forward, glancing at each other from time to time, and then smiled as they turned their heads to look to the side. Around them, white snow pressed down on the branches, and students walked back and forth. 2:00 in the afternoon at the Martial Arts Hobby Club. At home, Yenjika had already tied her hair into a ponytail and changed into a full set of white martial arts suit with black edges. She looked both youthful and charming, and her face was so radiant that George, Wilton, and the other martial arts club members couldn't take their eyes off her. They couldn't believe that it was the usually old-fashioned and conservative Sophia. Although the two countries had different aesthetic standards, their cultures had influenced each other for many years. true beauty was still recognized. Sophia's features were exquisite, but her figure was too average. George and Wilton looked at each other and shook their heads. They were loyal fans of big breasts and big buttocks. They found Susan very sexy. In comparison, Yenjika was an angel who could be appreciated with a calm mind. After chatting for a while, Lu Cheng, who knew what his wife was thinking, suggested actual combat training. Her. George pointed at the slender Yenjika and blurted out in shock. Is there a problem? Yenjika knew that she was being discriminated against and felt a little annoyed. Thinking of Ren, who looked like a cartoon character and a doll, George quickly shook his head. No, no problem. Lu Cheng laughed and raised his right hand to announce the start of the match. George gathered his thoughts and got into a boxing stance. He took a few tentative steps and threw a punch. Yenjika shook her shoulder and turned her arm into a spear. With a snap, she stabbed at her opponent's throat, forcing him to raise his fist and shrink his head to defend himself. With her joints springing and fascia stretching, the girl took advantage of the opportunity to launch 24 blizzard strikes. After 3 punches in a row, she suddenly swung her waist, tightened her trousers, and gave a low kick. George, who was already a little flustered, was suddenly kicked. He raised his right leg to block and swung back, and his body fell forward. Next, Lu Cheng reached out to support George and let Wilton take over. This Caucasian student's skills were probably only of amateur third pin, but his body condition was good and his arm strength was sufficient. Overall, he was probably of amateur first pin. It was a pity that he couldn't make full use of his strength. Wilton was slightly weaker than George, but Yenjika, who hadn't used her skills for a long time, let go of one opportunity after another to prolong the match. However, the result was not in doubt. Wilton was hit by her sliding punch that contained meteor force and almost vomited on the spot. The Caucasian girl, Colleen, was next. Yenjika changed her style and applied what little she learned from watching Lu Cheng's battle videos into the match. After defeating 5 students in a row, her physical strength was obviously depleted. Her spirit was even worse. A thin layer of sweat appeared on her forehead. She chose to stop and rest. Lu Cheng helped her wipe her sweat with a towel and asked George and Wilton casually, "You're from Jaruga sect, right?" "We used to be." Wilton answered bitterly. George explained in the same tone, "We left because we couldn't become combat apprentices for a few years." "What's the problem?" Lu Cheng asked curiously. "We couldn't awaken our own spirit." George sighed and looked at Lu Cheng expectantly. "Lu, do you think there's hope for us to learn Chinese martial arts? If we can't awaken our own spirit, then it's more difficult to practice still stance. Of course, different martial arts systems focus on different aspects. It's not impossible for them to enter meditation." Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, "Calming the mind and focusing on the mind are the prerequisites of most martial arts and combat sections. However, everyone's methods are different. Jaruga combines self-hypnosis, Mission sect leaves their worries to God, and our country's martial arts emphasizes daily practice to get rid of distracting thoughts and seek for peace of mind. If you can't do this, you can only place your hopes on modern scientific research or cult-like martial arts. When we practice Jaruga, we can become very quiet, but we can't feel our own spirit," Wilton answered bitterly. "Is it because our awareness is too strong and we instinctively resist self-hypnosis?" Lu Cheng saw that more and more martial arts club members had gathered around. He pondered for a moment and said, "Then I'll do a few moves and you guys can feel it." After that, he took off his jacket and let Yenjika hold it. He got into a stance and slowly punched and pulled back his arm. There was nothing special about his moves, and they were so slow that they were useless in actual combat. George, Colleen, and the rest watched blankly, not knowing what was going on. Gradually, they felt that Lu Cheng's movements were like the gentle surface of a lake or the unfolding of clouds. They couldn't help but become quiet, unwilling to disturb the natural harmony or disturb the peace in their hearts. Away from the hustle and bustle of the city, at this moment, they seemed to see the deep blue sea and the sparkling waves under the moonlight. When Lu Qing stopped his slow punches and kicks, the surroundings were as silent as a church that had just finished praying. There's hope for those who were quiet just now. He smiled, took his jacket from Yenjika and put it on. He whispered, do you want to fight a few more rounds, or do you want to shower and go home? I'll shower at home. I forgot to bring shampoo and facial cleanser. The girl bit her lip and replied. She felt that her IQ was at its lowest today. Lu Qing laughed, pulled the girl over, waved to George and the rest, and walked slowly towards the entrance of the martial arts club. It was only then that George and the rest woke up from their daze, as though they had just heard a symphony that cleansed their hearts. Lu Qing and Yan Zhika's figures had already disappeared at the entrance, leaving behind some whispers in Chinese. Is this the result of your understanding of enemy heart-freezing move? Yeah, Coach Yan has a good eye. At the same time, a security company sent out a warning to its partners. China, Wuyue Club, Lu Qing, has appeared in Connecticut. Extremely dangerous. Lu. In the Msasi Martial Arts Club, a black-haired, brown-eyed young man saw the news. His lips curled into a smile, and his eyes shone like the stars in the sky. P.S. Looking for monthly votes on the last day. Oh right, something might happen in the afternoon, but it hasn't been decided yet. If I don't update at 7, then it will be at 11. Chapter 525. After leaving the martial arts hobby club, Lu Qing and Yan Zhika went straight home. They planned to go to the supermarket this weekend to stock up on ingredients for next Monday's New Year and birthday celebration. After showering, drying her hair and changing into a fresh set of home clothes, Yan Zhika stood in front of the bed. She spread her arms and leaned back, falling into the blanket comfortably. Then she said coquettishly, Cheng, I'm going to sleep first. Come and massage me until I fall asleep. Okay. Lu Qing smiled and leaned over. Controlling his body, he used the most suitable strength to release the tremor force to relieve the tension and deep tiredness in her muscles. She closed her eyes in satisfaction. A little higher, a little higher. Yes, right here. It's so sore. Ouch, it's so sore. My poor old waist. Yan Zhika guided her, personal masseur. Before she finished her words, she suddenly felt Lu Cheng's movements stop. She let out 2 muffled laughs. The girl was at a loss at first. Then she came to her senses and buried her face in the pillow. She hit the side and said fiercely, "It's all your fault." Lu Cheng apologized, seriously. His technique became more and more exquisite. It didn't take long for Yan Zhika's whole body to relax. Her tiredness was relieved and she began to feel sleepy. After massaging for a while, he saw that the girl's breathing had stabilized and she had fallen asleep. Lu Qing retracted his hands and lay on the side. He planned to play with his phone for a while before going to the lawn outside to do some more training. Just as he got into position, Yan Zhika rolled over as if she had an automatic radar. She wrapped her arms around her chest and raised her right leg slightly above her knee. In the blink of an eye, Lu Cheng was tied up. The culprit didn't move at all. She was sleeping soundly. Who is sleeping so soundly? Lu Cheng looked at the girl's quiet and beautiful face with a smile. Looking at her, he suddenly felt a little sleepy. Sleeping so soundly. This kind of life is so relaxing, relaxing. Lu Cheng didn't resist the call. He hugged Yan Zhika, closed his eyes and fell asleep. Lu Cheng didn't know how long he had slept. When he woke up, it was already dark outside. It was quiet everywhere. Only a faint light shone through the curtainless window, casting a faint glow on the room. What time is it? Yan Zhika opened her eyes in a daze and asked casually. Lu Cheng smiled lazily and said, "It's just getting dark, about 6 o'clock. Yes. Yan Zhika changed her position and lay side by side with Lu Cheng. She said lazily, I'm a little hungry, mine is already protesting. Lu Qing tilted his head and looked at the girl's small and delicate ears. Let's not make any troublesome dishes later. We'll defrost the meat, cut it into pieces, and roast it. We have several kinds of dipping sauces from Shushan, Songcheng, Dongying, and Gaoli at home. You can choose whatever you want. Yan Zhika planned generously. Then we'll wash some vegetable leaves. As she spoke, she suddenly bit her lower lip and said in an aggrieved manner, but what if I don't want to move? I just want to lie down like this. What a coincidence. Me too. Lu Qing felt that he was both captured by his little fairy and the quilt. Do you want to starve your wife to death? Yan Zhika snorted. I'll get up. I'll get up right away. Lu Qing struggled to turn around and leave the quilt, only to find that the girl also sat up. Seeing his surprised and confused expression, Yan Zhika raised her chin and looked to the side. I have to supervise you. Although she said she was supervising, she dominated the whole process. Not only did she busy herself, but she also gave orders. When the electricity was plugged in and the meat in the roast pot was sizzling, the process finally came to an end. The surroundings were peaceful, the lights were warm, and the aroma of the meat filled the air. Lu Qing and Yan Zhika looked at each other, smiled, and raised their glasses. It was impossible to be touched so often in life. This was enough. Don't overcook the meat. The fat parts of the beef are easy to crumble and the texture will harden. The girl recalled her past experience and dug out her experience of roasting meat, trying to make herself seem omnipotent. I'm Coach Yan. Halfway through the meal, Lu Qing suddenly stopped and turned to look at the door. What's wrong? Yan Zhika asked blankly. Someone is approaching. Lu Qing stood up and walked to the door. He looked relaxed and didn't feel any danger. After 10 or 20 seconds, the doorbell rang. He counted to 3 and opened the door. A middle-aged man in a black tuxedo with a bow tie of the same color stood outside. His shirt was neat and tidy. He had an eye-catching mustache and spoke with a strong accent. Hello, are you Mr. Lu Qing? Yes. Lu Qing looked at him, puzzled. The middle-aged man handed over an invitation with both hands and replied with a smile, My master would like to invite Mr. Lu to a banquet this weekend. If possible, he hopes that you can have a friendly duel with him. This will not be made public. Only the guests of the banquet can watch. A challenge is coming. Lu Qing thought. He took the invitation and opened it. He saw the logo of a fist holding a trident in the Msasi Martial Arts Arena, the location of the banquet, the exact time, and the name of the signatory. Brandon. Lu Qing read out the name and knew who it was. He looked up at the middle-aged man and nodded politely. I'll be there on time. Thank you. The middle-aged man placed his right hand on his chest and bowed. After sending him off, Lu Qing closed the door and met Coach Yan's scrutinizing gaze. What's the matter? Yan Zhika could only vaguely hear the words, banquet, and duel. Brandon from the Jaruga sect wants to challenge me at a banquet of high standards. Lu Qing smiled casually. Brandon was the most popular grandmaster of martial arts in the Msasi Martial Arts Arena in recent years. He was only 22 years old and had already become a senior, which was equivalent to an inhuman. He had just turned 24 this year and was one of the top rising stars in the entire United States. His father, Adrian, was also a veteran martial artist. He was the middle-aged Caucasian man wielding a big sword that Lu Qing saw when he first arrived at the Msasi Martial Arts Arena. 2 veterans in one family had established the Jackson family's position in Connecticut. When? Yan Zhika's eyes sparkled as she asked with great interest. For such a formal challenge, safety was guaranteed. Moreover, both parties were at the inhuman stage and had strong control. Therefore, she wasn't worried. Tomorrow night. Lu Qing acted like an American movie. He bent down and extended his hand. Miss, would you like to go with me? My pleasure. Yenjika smiled sweetly and extended her hand. The next day at 7 in the evening, the couple arrived at the Riverside Manor in Songqing University's martial arts suit as a couple's outfit. Under the guidance of the servant, they entered the banquet hall. Lu Cheng's nose itched with the smell of perfume, making him want to sneeze. He and Yenjika weren't dressed impolitely because the host of the banquet was also in a martial arts suit. Brandon stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, holding a glass of golden champagne. He raised his glass at Lu Cheng and Yenjika with a smile. He had black hair and brown eyes. He was tall and muscular, and his skin was close to bronze. He was full of power and pressure. Taking a sip of the champagne, Brandon laughed from afar. Are you going to give us an opening dance or an ending dance? As he spoke, he pointed at the open-air martial arts arena outside to prevent Lu Cheng from misunderstanding. The place was brightly lit, as though it was daytime. Huge Roman-style stone pillars stood there. I don't have a problem with either. Lu Cheng replied with a smile. Then let's do it now. I can't wait. Brandon smiled apologetically. The conversation between the two of them attracted the attention of the guests. Numerous gazes were cast on them, and they were all overflowing with interest. Lu Cheng looked around and asked in a low voice, "Where's the referee?" Referee? Brandon shrugged his shoulders. I hate referees. A formal challenge requires a referee. Otherwise, I'd rather not accept it. Lu Cheng expressed his opinion firmly. Brandon immediately showed an amused expression. As an outstanding martial artist, how can you rely on the protection of the referee? Don't tell me that you're scared and cowardly now that you're away from the referee. Have you forgotten that fighting is an art used on the battlefield? Have you forgotten the boiling blood and the courage of a man? Only those who are used to fighting without any protection are real men and real warriors. If you admit that you're a boy crying in his mother's arms and a shameful coward, then you can leave. Yenjika was infuriated by his words. Her body trembled slightly. Let's go. Lu Cheng pulled her, turned around calmly, and walked towards the door. If I hadn't experienced those few life and death battles, I would definitely be enraged. However, the more I experienced the feeling of walking on the edge of death, the less I want to take the initiative to try it. I'm not afraid, but that doesn't mean I like it. Since I started practicing martial arts, all the battles without a referee were either because I had absolute confidence or because I was forced into it. How can I take the initiative to jump into a dangerous situation? This is completely against my martial arts will. I'm not protecting my reputation. Yenjika followed him blankly. She suddenly calmed down under the surprised gazes of the guests. She held Lu Cheng's hand tighter. She felt that he was more courageous than accepting the challenge. All right. At this moment, Brandon clapped his hands and said with a sigh, I can only force myself. Mr. Polk, please be the referee for today's battle. Lu Cheng stopped in his tracks and turned around. He calmly met the gazes of those who were looking at him as if he was a coward. P.S. Don't waste the remaining monthly votes. Also, ask for a guaranteed monthly vote for July. You can vote after midnight. Chapter 526. The Jackson family held an important position in the entire Juruga. There was no lack of experts attending their banquet. Even if Brandon didn't invite his father, Adrian, to be the referee to avoid suspicion, there were still other suitable candidates. Polk, who was not a member of the Msasi, came from another sect within the Juruga Martial Arts Society that emphasized fist and kick. He was a veteran grandmaster of martial arts for more than 20 years. He had a light yellow beard that was almost white, and his eyes were dark blue. When he raised his head, there were no wrinkles. He sized up Lu Cheng, who had turned around and slowly finished the champagne in his hand. He placed the glass on the waiter's tray and replied with a deep voice, "All right." He didn't say much, nor did he make any sarcastic remarks. He instantly turned into a neutral referee, exited from the side door, and walked to the center of the Roman stone pillars. "Please." Brandon bowed with a smile and made a gentlemanly invitation to Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng passed his phone to Yan Zhike and returned the gesture with a composed expression. He calmly followed the referee and entered the open-air arena. Brandon paused for a moment and suddenly moved his arms. His muscles, fascias, and joints emitted sounds of strength. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him trembled slightly and shook continuously. "Good." One by one, the guests gave him a thumbs up. After the warm-up was over, Brandon walked out of the banquet hall with his heavy body and nimble footsteps like a human bear. He stood in front of Lu Cheng and got into a boxing stance. The towering ancient stone pillars around them cut off the field of vision, making the venue desolate and spacious. The smile on Brandon's face gradually disappeared. His eyes seemed to be burning with a star-like radiance, brimming with a strong desire for battle. He locked his opponent's figure in the center of his pupils. When he said he didn't want a referee, it was his honest opinion and also a psychological tactic. If his opponent couldn't stand the sarcasm and chose to fight as a man, he would enter the environment he was most familiar with. His opponent would definitely be fearful of any unexpected accidents. If he was afraid of danger and insisted on not agreeing to a retro gladiator fight, he would feel dejected even with a referee. He would feel that he had lost a round before the match had even begun. It would be hard for him to show any courage or guts in front of him. Although Lu Cheng's reaction of leaving without hesitation was a little unexpected, it was still considered normal and didn't affect him. At this moment, Poke raised his right hand and thoughtfully reminded him, "Get ready." Immediately after, he waved his hand fiercely. His voice passed through the windows and into the hall, "Begin." Just as the referee finished his sentence, Lu Cheng suddenly saw a blinding light erupting from the surface of Brandon's body. The light blinded his vision and he couldn't see anything clearly anymore. Awakening one's self-spirit was the starting point of the true inheritance of the Jaruga sect. It was also the key to becoming a combat apprentice. From this point onwards, the practitioner would follow a special training method to strengthen one's self-spirit step by step. It would complement and strengthen one's self-spirit with the strengthening of one's physical body, until the mutation of one's cells and genes occurred, giving rise to special, inhuman abilities. The Jaruga sect named these abilities differently from the mainstream. Some were called sea, some were called stars, and so on. What Adrian and Brandon had awakened were stars. They had the function of heaviness and the mysteries of light. At this moment, Brandon displayed the results of his cultivation in the past year without holding back. Star, radiant light. Lu Cheng's vision was blinded by white. All he could hear was the sound of his enemy breaking through the air barrier at high speed. Other than that, everything else was covered up. It was as though Lu Cheng had completely lost track of his enemy. Brandon appeared diagonally in front of Lu Cheng in a flash. Exerting strength in his legs, he turned his back halfway and swung his right arm out. Covered in specks of light, he executed a perfect right hook from the bottom to the top, aiming straight for his opponent's chin. With the heaviness of Star and his own strength, he was confident that he could forcefully break through any of his opponent's barriers other than Dan's stage explosion. Moreover, the Jaruga sect's explosion was based on one's self-spirit. There was no need for the so-called qi and blood concentration, like the Chinese martial artists. Although it would result in the loss of the terrifying ability to unify one's force and absolute reaction, it would increase one's speed by a notch. Not only that, but it would also give one a stronger sense of danger. Each had its own advantages and disadvantages. Brandon's current plan was to use the initiative to his advantage and completely suppress his opponent, not giving him the chance to control the rhythm and avoid his weaknesses. Bam! Brandon's fist pierced through the air, causing goosebumps to form on Lu Cheng's chin. However, in a situation where he couldn't see or hear, he quickly raised his right arm and threw a sideways punch, accurately landing on the side of Brandon's uppercut. With a light strike, he deflected his opponent's thick arm, causing it to miss its target. Brandon had anticipated this. He immediately put his left fist into position and combined them. While Lu Cheng's sight and hearing had yet to recover, he launched a series of attacks. Crisp sounds rang out continuously. Not only did his combat techniques carry traces of Musashi, but he also seemed to incorporate the characteristics of Miluo, Nanjing, and other countries. His knee strikes and low kicks were at the peak of perfection, effectively making up for the gaps in his punches. Bam! 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 Brandon's punches alternated between hooks and swings. Sometimes they were straight, and sometimes they were pointed. Sparks of light scattered, illuminating the crystals on Lu Cheng's hands, arms, and legs. During this process, he slightly stimulated his own spirit, causing his muscles and tendons to tremble. He completed a low-intensity outburst. His punches were heavy, and his strength surged. His attacks were tightly connected, and his rhythm was extremely fast. Lu Cheng couldn't find an opportunity to use force concentration. He could only use ice spirit to block and take a step back. In order not to associate him with the Deliveryman, and to effectively familiarize himself with his gains from last year, he planned to use Emperor Yen force sparingly in official events in America. He planned to use it as a surprise attack at a critical moment. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng swung his arm and threw a punch. His Zen undersea tremor, and his leg bent low kick. He blocked 3 consecutive attacks and took 3 consecutive steps back. Every step left a clear crack on the stone floor. The guests watching the battle through the floor-to-ceiling windows relaxed as they sipped on their champagne. Yenjika held a glass of plain water. There wasn't any worry on her face. She and Lu Cheng had discussed the current situation many times last night and during the day. As expected, after taking 2 more steps back and almost crashing into a Roman stone pillar, Lu Cheng suddenly advanced instead of retreating. He jumped half a step and threw a quick punch at his opponent's lower abdomen. Brandon's fist was shrouded in starlight. It looked like he was wearing a practice glove. He swung his arm and blocked his opponent's attack with a bang. Boom! The sound of rolling thunder reverberated in all directions. Both of them, who seemed to have frozen momentarily from the collision of their fists, shook at the same time. Their radiance turned white and turned into frost that splashed outwards. They were evenly matched. Lu Cheng had turned the tables by using 24 blizzard strikes consecutively. Even without using force concentration, he was able to block his opponent's low-intensity outburst attack. Seeing this, Brandon, whose body was starting to stiffen from the cold, immediately changed. He stimulated his own spirit, connecting his muscles and blood, and propping up his skin and tendons. His body suddenly enlarged. He raised his thicker right arm high and turned it into a terrifying giant sword. Mixed with heavy starlight, he chopped down at Lu Cheng's head. The ferocity of the attack seemed to be able to cut through everything. Adrian was a veteran grandmaster of martial arts who was famous for using greatswords. As his son, although Brandon disdained to rely on weapons, he had integrated swordsmanship and the corresponding use of stars into his punches and kicks. It had become his favorite way of attacking when he was in a frenzy. Before the greatsword arrived, Lu Cheng's hair stood on end. Without hesitation, he circulated his qi and blood, stimulating the corresponding parts of his body. His muscles bulged, and his tendons protruded. Simplified fighting formula. The instant expansion stirred up the airflow in the surroundings. Together with the punch flew up into the sky and slammed into Brandon's arm. Boom! Transparent ripples spread rapidly. Cracks spread under Lu Cheng's feet. Brandon's arm, which had transformed into a sword, rebounded, causing his body to swing backwards. His qi and blood circulated again. Stimulated again, Lu Cheng took half a step forward expressionlessly. He clenched his fist and punched straight at his chest. The intertwining greenish-black muscles were filled with explosive power. So fast. Brandon was shocked. He didn't care that the frenzy wasn't over yet. He raised his left arm and swung the greatsword horizontally. It looked ordinary, but it was filled with accumulated strength. Bam! Flesh and blood collided. There was a dent, and the bones were slightly deformed. However, they immediately reverted to their original form. Brandon held his breath as he felt the majestic and terrifying impact. He was experienced. With a twist of his waist, he shot backwards like lightning and crashed into a Roman pillar. Stone chips flew everywhere, and the thick pillar swayed. It almost fell or broke. Lu Qing wouldn't let this opportunity go. He outlined the attainment formula and once again used his qi and blood to stimulate his body, cutting down on the intermediate steps. With just a step, he closed in on his enemy. At this moment, Brandon's face lit up with excitement. The surface of his body shone again, suppressing the surrounding streetlights and illuminating the entire open-air arena. In the abnormal brilliance, silhouettes appeared one after another. They all looked like Brandon. They pounced on Lu Qing from all directions, forcing him to react with absolute reaction. Jiruga's star's technique, illusory light. The Roman pillars in the arena weren't there to look good or to show taste. Their position effectively affected reflection and refraction, making the illusory light stronger and closer to reality. To Brandon, the other 7 silhouettes were formed by light energy. They could also cause damage. They weren't fake. P.S. Since everyone doesn't like the old rules, I'll update first. Also, I'd like to thank everyone. Although the June update didn't decrease, it was still unstable. Martial arts actually made it into the top 10 monthly votes for the first time, ranking 9th. With the increasing number of books in circulation, it wasn't easy at all. Also, please guarantee the monthly votes. Chapter 527. In the brightly lit arena, a total of 7 identical figures pounced at Lu Qing. All of them stirred up a gust of wind, creating a stimulus that was hard to distinguish. Of course, it was easy to tell because the Roman pillar that Brandon had crashed into was still shaking slightly. The corresponding figure was clear and distinct. However, Lu Qing took a step to the side, lowered his shoulders, and leaned to the side. Following that, he swung his right arm and threw a punch like a bullet towards the empty space. Bam! The sound of the collision shook the floor-to-ceiling windows in the hall. Suddenly, starlight-covered skin, bulging muscles, and strong knuckles appeared in front of Lu Cheng's frosty right fist. At some point in time, Brandon had bizarrely changed his position, leaving behind an illusion beside the Roman pillar where he was previously standing. There were a total of 7 figures, all of which were illusions. His real body had long gone into hiding. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos to launch a surprise attack and deal a fatal blow to his opponent. For most of the Inhuman experts, it was indeed a threat. If Lu Cheng's ice mirror hadn't made the breakthrough and was still at the same level as before, he would have been caught in a fluster. One moment of carelessness and he would have been caught in the crossfire. But right now, his consciousness was high up in the sky as a god 3 feet above his head. Using the ice mirror to reflect his surroundings, he keenly sensed the anomaly and made the first move, interrupting Brandon's ambush. Poof! 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 At the same time, the 7 Brandon figures formed by light energy pounced on Lu Cheng, triggering waves of blinding brilliance and flowing starlight. As Lu Qing took a step forward and struck diagonally, a thick layer of ice crystals had formed on the surface of his body. They were translucent, solid, and extraordinary. Under the burning and melting of the light, they either sizzled into water or vaporized instantly, forcefully resisting this round of attacks. If it wasn't for the improvement of his ice armor, he definitely wouldn't have chosen such a response. Moreover, the 7 figures came from different directions. Without the stacking of corrosion, he could naturally deal with them calmly, as immovable as a mountain. Amidst the explosion, as the 7 figures disappeared, Brandon's silhouette was quickly outlined. His left hand bounced back, swinging involuntarily as he felt an unbearable pain. His punch was interrupted and he was almost injured. The pain stimulated Brandon's soul, causing him to have a strong desire for violence. He was like a soldier whose eyes were bloodshot. When Brandon noticed that Lu Cheng had weakened from the head-on clash just now, he flexed his back muscles without hesitation and delivered a heavy straight punch. Under the cover of such a ferocious attack, he stepped forward with his left foot and tripped Lu Cheng's legs, acting as both a fulcrum and a rope. This was the jutsu of the Jiruga sect. Brandon wanted to turn the battle into a ground fight. He would rely on the skillful coordination of his constellation ability to unleash various techniques to break the enemy's so-called listening skill and completely subdue him. When he kicked, Lu Cheng took a step back. From the perspective of the guests in the hall, the two of them seemed to be performing a dance with tacit understanding. Brandon's kick missed, and his straight punch failed. He immediately turned sideways, lowered his back, and extended his right palm. He was going to use his well-practiced technique to throw his opponent to the ground. Lu Cheng took another step back. It was as if he had known the enemy's plan in advance, so that his fall would fail awkwardly. Pa! Lu Cheng shook his right shoulder and swung out his arm, tightening it from its softness. Then, like a whip, he struck towards the side of Brandon's neck. Brandon raised his arm, which glowed brilliantly, and assumed a defensive boxing stance. He tilted his head to the side, guarding against the second and third part of the enemy's attack. When he watched the video of the battle, the memory was still fresh in his mind. He still had a lingering fear. Bam! Brandon's arm swayed a little as he lashed out with the whip. It was as though countless dust particles were flying into the air. As expected, Lu Cheng snapped his knuckles, aimed at the side of his face, and spread his fingers. Even though he was far away, he could imagine the enhancement Aurora would provide. With a whoosh, the tip of Lu Cheng's fingers shot out streaks of crystal-clear cold light. They left his body like sharp arrows and headed straight for the enemy's temples and eyes. They were faster, more solid, and more ferocious than Aurora. They were like ice spirits. Brandon had guessed the beginning, but he didn't expect the ending. When he saw the sudden change, he was scared out of his wits. Cold sweat broke out on his back, and he felt as if electricity had passed through his pores. He instinctively shrunk his head and curled up his body. He felt the sound of the arrow elongating in his ears. The bone-piercing cold flew past his scalp and into the surface of an ancient Roman-style stone pillar. Lu Cheng pulled back his chi and blood calmly and unleashed his Dan force. He turned, lifted his hips, tightened his trousers, and lashed out with his leg. Like a steel whip, he lashed out at the enemy who was facing him from the side. Brandon quickly stimulated his self-spirit. He quickly swung his arm, clenched his fist, and hammered down. He narrowly missed the whip kick. Amidst the loud bang, invisible waves rippled outwards. Brandon, who was built like a human bear, nimbly moved his waist and back muscles. Despite being at a disadvantage, he used the force to leap away, instantly widening the distance between them to more than 10 meters. Lu Cheng concealed his attainment formula and followed up with a step. He retracted his chi and blood again and unleashed his force again. He wore a crystal-clear frost glove on his left fist, swinging it sideways. It was unusually heavy. Bam! After Brandon blocked the attack, he swung his right fist again. He used the same force concentration and ice spirit to hurt his opponent. Bam! 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 Lu Cheng completed one explosion after another rhythmically. He swung his arms, swung his legs, and struck with his knees. Every attack was heavy and filled with coldness. Bam! 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 Faced with his opponent's precise footwork and attacks, Brandon was forced to use high-intensity explosive attacks to defend himself. He lost his advantage of being faster. After blocking more than a dozen attacks, he finally retreated. Every step he took created a cloud of dust, splinters, sand, and pebbles. It was like the battle scenes of the demigods recorded in many ancient books. Throughout this process, Brandon felt himself getting colder and colder. His gushing blood and beating heart couldn't completely alleviate this feeling. His body gradually stiffened and became more and more sluggish. Compared to the violent and ferocious Emperor Yen force, the Ice Spirit force had the advantage of erosion and lasting effect. Bam! Lu Cheng's fist turned into a hammer and smashed downwards, hitting Brandon's raised fist. The impact made him stagger backwards. His hair was wet, and the droplets of sweat turned into white frost when they fell to the ground. Unwilling to wait for his death, Brandon roared. He couldn't care less about anything else. He stimulated his self-spirit and gathered the light energy in his body in an attempt to buy himself a chance to take a breather and find a way to turn the tables around. While he stimulated himself, Lu Cheng seemed to have sensed it. He held his chi and blood in time. However, he didn't activate his Dan force immediately as usual. Instead, after a few moments of equilibrium, he seemed to have lost his temperature and blood, turning into an ice-cold corpse. The heaviness in his lower abdomen was still shrinking and moving away. This gave Brandon a chance to build up his strength. A smile of anticipation appeared on his face. He raised his left hand to protect his head and chest. Swinging his right fist, he struck out quickly and heavily. All the star brilliance gathered at a single point in front of him. Restriction of stars, light energy focus. Bam! At this moment, Lu Cheng's Dan force erupted uncontrollably. He was filled with blood again and regained his body temperature. He pulled his right arm and punched his chest, hitting the condensed star brilliance and glowing skin. Boom! Light exploded, illuminating the floor-to-ceiling windows in the hall. Yenjika bit her lips lightly, waiting for the figure to appear. The other guests forgot to drink, holding their glasses and watching intently. The exaggerated light disappeared in a flash, as though it was buried and devoured by something. Lu Cheng's figure appeared first, far away from his previous position. His right sleeve was in tatters, like an exploded bamboo. His skin was slightly charred and shrouded in white mist. Seeing his sorry appearance, the guests were about to applaud, but they soon noticed that Brandon was standing there in a daze. He was still protecting his face with his left fist and punching with his right fist. From his fingertips to his hair, he was covered in a layer of glittering crystals, as if he had been frozen. Water droplets dripped down rapidly, and the layer of ice melted rapidly. Lu Cheng circulated his chi and blood to stimulate his body parts. With a push of his feet, he pounced in front of Brandon again. Then, he stretched his back, swung his arm, and smashed his fist down. Bam! The air barrier exploded. Brandon, who had just been freed from the ice, threw out a punch slowly in an attempt to defend himself. However, he was sent flying backwards, breaking a Roman pillar with a loud bang. Lu Cheng slid forward again. Without any change in expression, he threw out his left fist and smashed it on his opponent's forehead. He didn't hold back. If he was hit like that, even a man made of iron would have his head blown off. Pain came from his back, and his limbs were sluggish. Brandon felt a stab in between his eyebrows. All he could see was Lu Cheng's fist, which was getting bigger and bigger, filling up his entire vision. At that moment, he clearly felt the taste of death. He couldn't help but tremble. He wanted to retreat, but he couldn't do so. Just as he was at his most desperate, a hand reached over. It glowed with a blue luster and held Lu Cheng's fist firmly. The referee, Poke, had made his move, announcing the result of the match. Brandon lost. Lu Cheng won. Lu Cheng retracted his fist, saluted, and walked towards the side door with a smile. He walked towards Yenjika, who was walking towards him. Phew. Brandon was still sitting on the pile of broken rocks, enjoying the beauty of being alive. He wasn't an idiot. He understood that Lu Cheng's, not holding back, at the end was a small proof. After entering the banquet hall, Lu Cheng and Yenjika exchanged glances. They whispered in unison, "Let's go." Wouldn't it be asking for a snub to stay at Brandon's banquet after winning? In ancient times, that would be asking for a beating. When the words entered their ears, the couple couldn't help but laugh. They walked towards the door hand in hand. No one tried to stop them. The room was silent. Outside the door, the night sky was dark. The evening breeze blew gently. Lu Cheng and Yan Zhike walked further and further towards the car park. Only their soft Chinese voice could be heard. You waited until the light energy focused before you tried that move of yours. Was it to better experience the characteristics of the Jiruga sect? Yeah. I keep feeling that this style is a little familiar. Maybe I was infected by the priest. P.S. I'm done with my work. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 528. The river was illuminated by the starlight, and the coldness was bone-chilling. The Connecticut city at the end of January had a different kind of beauty. After Yan Zhike drove out of Brandon's manor, she slowed down the car and wandered in the peaceful night, creating a feeling of leisure and relaxation. There aren't many cars here. Let me teach you how to drive. It's an automatic transmission, super easy to learn, she suggested with great interest. Sure, Lu Cheng answered without hesitation. He unbuckled his seat belt and walked to the other door. With his control of his body, coordination of his limbs, and reflexes, it shouldn't be hard for him to learn how to drive, right? He waited for the girl to get into the passenger seat before he got into the driver's seat, fastened his seatbelt, and closed the door. Don't you feel awkward? Yan Zhike turned her head and asked with a smile. A little. Lu Cheng answered honestly. So awkward. We're of different heights and body types. The most suitable seat height and distance are definitely different too. Lu Cheng, what's the difference between you wearing my t-shirt like this? Yan Zhike pointed out the problem with her bright eyes and taught Lu Cheng how to adjust his seat and rear-view mirror. After that, she excitedly introduced the application of brakes, accelerator, steering wheel, lights, gearbox lever, hand brake, and so on. The automatic transmission was relatively easy. Lu Cheng was on the road in no time. He maintained a stable speed and cautiously operated ice mirror to eliminate his nervousness and anxiety. Yan Zhike, who had tasted the taste of being a coach again, was satisfied. She praised herself a little and casually picked up her phone to surf the web. Hey, there's another deliveryman in the Big Apple, she exclaimed softly and said cheerfully. How many imitators are there? Lu Cheng asked, amused. His eyes were still looking straight ahead. The superhero culture in the United States of America really spread everywhere and had a far-reaching impact. 1, 2, 6, 7. Yan Zhike rolled her eyes and counted with her fingers. About 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Before Lu Cheng could point out that it was no different from not saying anything, she cleverly changed the topic. This is good news for you. Yeah. Lu Cheng nodded casually. Otherwise, most superheroes would have been exposed long ago. In the past few months, there had been people imitating the deliveryman in Big Apple, Luo City, and other places to punish criminals. Some of them were crudely seen through, while others imitated the deliveryman perfectly. In terms of style and capability, the deliveryman was believed to be the work of the deliveryman again. It was said that a bureau of the Federation had combined the two cases and expanded the scope of the investigation. It was suspected that the deliveryman was not in Connecticut before and after the two incidents in Connecticut. For a veteran grandmaster of combat, this was entirely possible, and there were precedents in the past. Truth and falsehood were the active soil of American superheroes. Different countries had different situations. Using one's own country to trick another country would often lead to a huge mistake. Smith had foreseen this and analyzed it in detail for himself. Whether it was in the United States or Hua Nation, the most difficult case to solve was the same. That was, someone came to a foreign land on a whim and casually killed a passerby who had nothing to do with them. Moreover, there were no clues such as fingerprints, DNA, and surveillance cameras left behind. Then, the investigators could only rely on their luck to find a needle in a haystack. The police should not be underestimated, nor should they be worshipped. Unsolved cases related to American superheroes were too numerous to mention. The clown reappears in Big Apple, another tragic murder case. Yenjika read the news headline and sighed. Compared to that place, Connecticut's security is worth 5 stars. Although there were gangs and dangerous criminals here, they were relatively few in number. Also, none of them had antisocial personalities and would not provoke the government. It can't be helped. After all, it's the most prosperous city in America. Physical invulnerability experts and inhuman experts like to gather there. Once the number of experts increases, it's normal to have a few scumbags and perverts. Haven't there been experts who took revenge on society in places like Beijing, Huahai, Huaqing, and Moshang? Haven't there been vicious cases with huge impact that went unsolved? Don't we, the Ice God sect and Shushan study, occasionally hand over disciples to the judicial authorities? Lu Qing comforted his wife. As the financial center of America, Connecticut was a big city with a high ranking. It had the super sect Jaruga, a cult that could go against it, and a government that maintained stability. There were close to 10 physical invulnerability experts, not to mention the number of inhumans. So far, only 2 dangerous criminals had appeared, which showed that the security was good. Of course, it was only limited to certain areas. Similarly, places like Beijing, Huahai, and Moshang were also places where experts gathered. It was just that the control was stricter, so there weren't many vicious cases. To the residents of Connecticut or the Big Apple, super criminals weren't the biggest threat. In modern society, once exposed, they would definitely be arrested and dealt with. Such perverted murderers wouldn't dare to commit crimes openly. They would either be like Mizuski, who relied on seduction and gradual corruption, or like the butcher, who chose places with insufficient surveillance resources. As long as they didn't go to places they weren't supposed to and could resist the temptation, the danger level was actually very low. Of course, after Lu Cheng's cleanup, it was close to 0. To the average person, the biggest threat was terrorists, people who wanted to take revenge on society, and newbies who thought they could easily escape surveillance. Yenjika's own strength was more than enough to deal with them, not to mention she had a full-time bodyguard. Auntie Do, I'm just saying I live a life in the classroom, library, home, and supermarket every day. I almost never attend parties or gatherings. Who would target me for no reason? As Yenjika spoke, she suddenly frowned and looked ahead. After pausing for a moment, she said, Cheng, do you not know the way? Seems like we're driving the wrong way. Lu Cheng answered calmly, yeah, it's my first time here. How could I know the way? Besides, who would remember the way in a car? So self-righteous. Yenjika was stunned for a few seconds. When did we go the wrong way? We should have turned left at the intersection with the bridge. We passed that intersection before you mentioned the clown. Lu Qing thought for a moment and said with a strange expression. When I was counting how many delivery men? Yenjika asked casually as she entered the map and planned to navigate. No, it was even earlier. Lu Qing answered honestly. When I said the delivery men appeared in the Big Apple again. Yenjika blinked. Even earlier. Lu Qing reminded her with a trembling expression. Even earlier? Isn't that when I teach you how to drive? Yenjika laughed out loud. If she had an emoji pack, she would definitely choose to slam the table. Even earlier. Lu Qing drove with a solemn expression. Earlier? Then I'm not driving. Yenjika paused and thought for a moment. She raised her phone and cheered. Just treat it as a drive. Isn't that great? But I'm hungry. Lu Qing nodded his head silently. In the Riverside manner, Brandon pulled himself together and chatted with the guests. Although he didn't know that victory and defeat are common in war, his performance was very apartment. After the formalities, he used an excuse to change and went to the second floor. He saw his father, Adrian, standing at the balcony at the end of the corridor, looking at the flowing water. "How do you feel?" Adrian turned around and asked. Brandon took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "Stronger than me." Adrian nodded slightly and added calmly, "And he looks like he's experimenting and practicing the new ice sec technique." Brandon didn't want to admit it, but he answered honestly. "Yes." A smile appeared on Adrian's face as he spoke calmly. "You have to remember that there aren't many people who can become a martial artist's lifelong enemy. Among them, there are bound to be arrogance and conceit." February 1st, Sunday afternoon. Lu Cheng, who had completed his daily training, and Yenjika, who had finished her homework, drove to the biggest supermarket nearby to buy ingredients and daily necessities for the Chinese New Year. After filling up 2 cars, they stopped at the cashier and took out the items one by one to pay for them. Yenjika watched as her husband busied himself. She helped him from time to time, looking relaxed and comfortable. She even started thinking about the dishes for their reunion dinner. At that moment, she saw Lu Cheng take out 6 boxes with a calm expression and pass them to the cashier. She didn't know how many boxes of condoms they contained. When did he take them? How can he just buy them like that? Yenjika was stunned. Her cheeks were burning. She quickly turned her head to the side and pretended not to know the guy in front of her. Why couldn't he just be like before and come here to buy it on his own? After paying the bill and exiting the supermarket, Yenjika glared at Lu Cheng in embarrassment. "You're getting better at it." "What?" Lu Cheng was confused. That. Yenjika pointed at the boxes on top. Lu Cheng broke into laughter and answered calmly, "It's not my first time. Besides, it's normal for a married man with a wife to buy condoms. What's there to be embarrassed about?" "That's not what you said before. You said you were so embarrassed when you bought condoms for the first time." Yenjika, sadly, realized that a man's skin was the most thick-skinned thing. After joking around for a while, they put their spoils of war into the car. Just as Yenjika was about to start the engine, her phone rang. She had an incoming call. After a while, she pressed down on the receiver and looked at Lu Cheng. "The consulate and the International Student Union want to organize a celebration for the Chinese New Year. Do you want to join?" "Chinese New Year is my birthday too." Lu Cheng took the initiative to express his opinion. "Of course, it's just the 2 of us." Yenjika smiled and didn't say anything else. She rejected the invitation. "You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.